I will comment on all of the stupid fucking arguments that you guys maintain as mattering. All these pedophiles online, Nazis in the Ukraine, that Biden is a leftist, etc., etc., etc. There's really not that many etceteras. Really. There's not that much to it. So wasting my time, giving my energy to this endless black hole of ingratitude and oblivion. Oblivion's much cooler than this. This is not cool. This is an oblivion like a death in a gas station bathroom. Your fat ass heart, the beef jerky finally caught up with you. That's what this is. I'm not sticking around for that. You guys can all enjoy your toilet deaths. But the conversations about pedophiles and groomers and transgender pride being out of control, it's insane. It's insane. And then the rednecks put up Nazi flags in front of Disney World because they think it's hilarious, right? And then the lefties, they're not lefties, they're just the gamers that didn't prescribe to the Sargon of Akkad side. That's it. It's like this tribe against this tribe. I mean, I've said it in your heart. If you have one, you know it. Why the fuck am I going to sit around laboring over this stuff to break it down? It's not that complicated. And really, it's just one or two Google searches away from full comprehension. It's not that hard. It's not like what one would do ideally if one were to have achieved a status that informs others of there's value. If someone could become a sage, if there's somebody that can maintain a position and be a personality out here that can build a community, that can do fun things, joke around, get to know each other, all those things, but mostly there's an objective purpose that brings all these different interests together. Debate was one of those. It's not about debate. It's not. It's all some snotty ass mean girls with nothing sexy under their dress. Trying to, you. They're all fucking terrible. President Sunday, Stardust, happy fucking birthday. Like, these are some gaslighting shitheads that really just want the money. That's it. They want to be able to do this for a living. So they play nice. Oh, thank you for the tier 1 subs and all this fucking ridiculous shit that has nothing to do with parsing knowledge and wisdom and linearity and factuality or legality or representing data such as polls, graphs, statistics, any of the things that you're going to use to make a case. To make a case, to illustrate a premise, to provide comparative knowledge and understand what the disagreement is based on. This is not what happens here. It's not what happens. And if you go over to YouTube, what you find is you have some video essayists, but the ones who get to play, there are two factors there. One is you play to the current events. You play to the topics that are sexy at the time. And sexy is, I'm being very loose when I use that word, because being jiggly on the internet ain't fucking sexy. And the dilemma with the young people and their libidos and the old people and their misunderstanding of how lame it really is in their world. This contest of like, oh, we're good, and therefore the sexiness over here is all pedophilia because they're, over here judging it morally from a position where they can't see. And they certainly don't empathize or understand or investigate. Hell no. You call everyone pedophiles and groomers and Nazis and big pharma or, all the things that people tend to be very comfortable assigning to these. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Spending the time trying to break this down to present a worthwhile argument is one of the most worthless endeavors one could commit to out here in this wonderful potential. These platforms, we could all, us coming together and saying, you know what, my life is pretty boring, but this is what happened today. And everybody doing that collectively, right? That provides us with a leverage, a power that other power, traditional, conventional, institutional power, moneyed and entrenched power is competing against. Think about a country in North Africa, Middle East, any third world, undeveloped, war-torn country. Warlords rule there through strength, and in some cases they'll go out and they'll provide a narrative to Al Jazeera News or CNN or something to U.S. diplomats, UN negotiators, somebody. They are representing a story to them and say, oh, it's very difficult. We need aid. We have people starving here. And we'll stop the conflict here for a week if we can get this and that. And they play the game, right? So every once in a while they do that. But otherwise, it's strength. You take what you take. These areas and these regions that are that of which their reality is consistently made, us connecting on these democratic platforms where we have the opportunity to represent ourselves honestly, uniformly, collectively, not in some fucking corporate kumbaya way where it's like, oh yeah, we're all together, this is great. Not a hug box, not an echo chamber, not the things that you've turned this into. And then people that say things like it's a lefty hug box are even more snotty than the tribes and cults that they're criticizing. And they hide behind things like, I'm having a baby and I'm so busy, I'm a normal human. Everybody is a flake out here. Everybody's a liar. Everybody's an asshole. They just want their dick tickled. They want money and they want to be able to be so fortunate to get to do this for a living. What the fuck are you doing? You're not living. What are you doing? You're not providing a service. You're maintaining a lie. At best. Otherwise, it's a much deeper, more manipulative thing. And it's not just you manipulating other people. It's you manipulating yourself and having other people participate in this hug box. It's fucking stupid and retarded as fuck. Everything and everybody out here is fucked. It's conflict, man. It's armed conflict. In fact, I don't know if you deserve my Jerry Springer episode. I just don't know that you deserve this. Why isn't it showing up?
That's the love. It doesn't change.
Jimmy's revealing the truth to all his lovers.
Your boyfriend is sleeping with the guy you're cheating with.
I have a sexy secret today on Spring.
Nah, it doesn't make sense. Oh, you know what? Why didn't that work? Well, I guess the gods don't. I guess the gods agree with me, is the point. None for you. None for you. No fun. All business. Fuck you. Let's start this with not something fun. Let's go and check out what Dylan's done. Our friend Dylan. Dylan's one of the good ones. I don't know him. You don't know me. You know, it is what it is. But his work is real. The work that he's doing is actual and factual. Real work. He's been in the Ukraine. He's been in danger, in harm's way. He's in a difficult situation on purpose to represent the facts on the ground. Now, I don't want to say because of this, but he is doing that in competition with the bad narratives and the bad subjective analysis. Man, I can't help but to be too charitable for the bad fucking fucks and their stupid, shitty shit that they put out here saying, this is really what's going on in the world. United States aggression and sneakiness and interest in oil or whatever stupid fucking excuse people are bringing up today about this. They say this is the United States interest. Meanwhile, Russia is brutal, murderous, full of lies. Not one. See, normally in these situations, there is something that the offending party can say that may look as if it's representing the people in the area's interests or a grievance that lines up with actual activity. But in this case, there's nothing there. It's just Russia. It's just Russia being a complete monster, okay? And I like monsters, so that's not the right way to put that. Just being a murderous, imperialist, hulking murder machine. And they manipulate public understanding, too. Very, very well. Very, very effectively. So what I mean to say is there's not one actual defense for what Russia's doing. So Dylan, what he did was he met with whom are considered the far-right Nazi Ukrainian forces, the Nazi problem in Ukraine, right? And an interview with them. This is, as far as I know, this is the only thing like this out here. And this is what we could be doing, people. I think in other countries, people try, but they need our attention. And I've been out here, and no one's found me. So, it is what it is. Fuck everyone. But we could use this platform in ways that counter power. It'd be a checkmate, bitch. That's what we'd be dealing with. It'd be a checkmate against power. But we don't do that. We don't do that. Dylan does, and has, and anybody who pays attention would see this. Any reasonable person, that term gets used, that phrase gets used a lot. The expectation or standard of what a reasonable person is. A bunch of normies over here, a bunch of normies that know the FBI is being politically pointed at a political enemy. Biden has taken the FBI and said, arrest my political opponent. How fucking stupid are you? Huh? This is it. So, I don't have time to tickle your dick. If you think any of this stuff, if you think any of this ethno-nationalist brutality is becoming of an American, no less a patriot, or that any of this is real to any extent, any of it, the justification in being a climate denier, any of it, if you think any of it has any light shining through, then you are a fucking absolute moron retard. And you might be able to sound smart or maintain a discussion that tickles the dick of your friends. But Tucker Carlson, Nazis in Ukraine, all of these things, FBI being politicized, groomers and pedophiles being out there, this imaginarily complex argument about slave labor and how your concern with capitalism is really it's insane. It's all insane, and it doesn't connect to the ground. And I can show this to you. We can walk through it. I can just give you sources. You don't even need to listen to me talk. I can draw a picture. There's like dot, 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 connects to dot. It does not matter. It does not matter. Objective reality is there, okay? It's there. I mean, this is an existential, philosophical argument, and there's space for differences of opinion, obviously, but I do assert that there is an objective reality that we all share, but we choose to forsake that in favor of our preferences and worse. Nowadays, much worse. So I'm going to do my best part to break down by just sitting here and watching other people's content. We were going to do Jerry Springer, and you're going to see me in my prime, walking on stage, strutting my shit, but nobody deserves that. So we're going to watch Dylan's thing. If Lexi Calls Stress shows up, which I'm not feeling too hopeful of that, but if they do, then we can watch that Tucker 3 and take the time to break it down, because this can't survive. These narratives that are destroying your brains and society and more, the future of children, all these things you're supposed to care about, morals and society, having things look nice or be orderly or make sense, or I don't know. What is it that you want? Any of these things that you may claim to value, believe in, or want, let's put it to the test and see if this Tucker in this instance is a just or apt representative of the thinking and reality that serves that objective. Let's find out. Let's put it to the test. For now, let's find out that this stupid idea about Nazis in Ukraine is not only misinformed, but it is you directly playing into Putin's propaganda. This story isn't that complicated. Usually they are. Usually there are more complications and complexities and positions to consider before you can come in and say this is morally right or wrong. That's a heavy territory for conjecture. That's not an arena that I would not advise people to go dancing on that dance floor with the utmost of confidence before they had checked into and pushed on things. And normally there are things to check into and push on. But in this case, nowadays, where you've got, let's pull this up. I'll draw you a picture just for the slow kids in the back. Ain't nobody got to do this. That's the thing. There's no reason. There's no incentive. The incentives are to coalesce around these bad arguments. And they are so bad. They're terrible, terrible arguments. Nazis in the Ukraine, groomers online, pedophiles everywhere. Biden is the left and he's using the FBI. He's employing the FBI to prosecute a political opponent. It's all terribly stupid and meat-headed. It's all meat-headed. It's all dudes and their Karens wanting to get it right so they can say, did I do a good job, husband? Did I say it like you wanted me to? I mean, you might say, no, these are my opinions, but bitch, they ain't your opinions. You want to make your man happy. These opinions all come from the men. The whole red pill community, all of it. That's all it is. It's not that complicated. Meanwhile, there are things that are even less complicated, but much more deadly and immediate and urgent. And we even look at those things as if there's some complexity that necessarily brings us to the point where the proper understanding is that the West's interest in capital and the entrenchment of the Democratic Party and European dystopian, corpo wokist policies are all, this aggregated blob that's pushed Putin, that has antagonized Putin into this war. That's the argument, right? That it was Western aggression or encroachment or overthrowing governments. That's the argument, that the West provoked this. Oh my God. There's nothing there. If you go to Libya and you say, look, NATO taking Gaddafi out, it destabilized the region. You had open sewage, open slavery, open everything now in the absence of, yes, a bad leader, but now you have worse. If we want to talk about that, there are things there that's worth getting into. It makes sense to deliberate on that. But in this case with Ukraine and Russia, no less in America and Trump, there is nothing there. There are plenty of narratives, but none of them connect to the ground. All of them can be broken down, packed up, and shipped off very easily. But the whole group of narratives is too much to field, especially when people aren't interested in understanding. They just want to, I don't know. I would love to hear what the objective is. So we've got, Ukraine and Nazis. For real, Nazis, really? This is the problem. Then we've got groomers and pedophiles. And then we've got red pill pygmies. And then we've got, I don't know, we'll figure something. It's not an impressive array, but it's insane. Oh, okay. Let's, Trump is a criminal. But that's not the argument, right? The argument is that the Biden crime family, which is hilarious. If anyone wants to say, no, it's real, we can deal with that too. Biden crime family. It's so ridiculous. I can't wait till 3 o'clock comes. I'm so ready to be done with this shit. I'm not quitting, but I'm done with this. Chapter 2 may begin later, but yeah, we did this to death, and this is what we get. That we got a little at the end, and that makes me feel good. So maybe chapter 2, if and when come back. We'll do it in the daytime and try to groom. We'll try to groom some kids. Huh? How about that? Get them on over to the Biden crime family, the leftists. Get them to be leftists. Leftism. Biden and his leftism. Give me a fucking break. It's insane. capitalism. Like all of these complaints are misinformed. Terribly. And like I said, it's not even like there's maybe an argument here, an argument there. Can you see this stuff? It's not even like there's an argument here and an argument here. 1, 2. And, it's like, well, this is the right one. This is not how it is. It's not like that. Like, look, it's this one, but I can understand how maybe you'd think it was this one. You could think it was this one because there's this reason and this reason and this reason. And there's this reason over here and this reason. But it's really this one. No, there's no two. There's no two. It's just the one. But instead, what people have done is they've completely invention, fuck you vention. It's all this stuff, groomers and pedophiles, Nazis in Ukraine. Trump isn't a criminal and Biden is pointing the FBI at him. The red pill, societal, alpha, the structure, women are women, men are men. All of this is completely made up and is now become something more than that. And you've got other problems too, but they're all based off of bad fiction, all of them. And we can break it down, but these are the four. You got FBI being weaponized. Come on. Weaponized? Really? Is that how it works? This is not a monarchy, stupid fuck. This is not how this works. This is how people have, in their scarcity-driven trailer parks, they think it works this way. That power to just be like, I'm the king, and these are my institutions, and you will do this, and you will do that. And because that's how Trump ran it, right? He's like, you do it, and they're like, oh, we're a separate institution. We have this is our mission mandate. This is our mandate. Mission statement, and Trump's like, you're fired. Put somebody else in there that will, break the law. That's how he did it. So of course there's people like, Biden's creeping socialism, and when they look at social problems on the street, when they look at drug addiction and basically black people, that's what they're looking at. When they look at black people, they're like, see these damn N-words out here on the street, these social programs ain't working. These social programs ain't working. Here on Patriot Radio, we're going to get down to it. Patriot Radio. Give me a fucking break. It's not about social programs, and Biden is not able to affect it like that. He's not a king. For people to just use power unilaterally is not okay, you stupid redneck fuckers. You and your Patriot rebellion, what's going to happen? I cannot wait. I cannot wait to violate TOS on your ass. For fucking real. I can't wait. And I think you're itching for the same thing. So let's just get to that part. Shall we? Let's violate some TOS on the ground, motherfucker. Bring it on. I am itching for it. I'll shut my mouth, make a different noise.
This interview made me incredibly nervous. There are not many long-form interviews with Ukrainian ultranationalists that are translated into English, much less ideologically devoted right sector fighters. Especially ones who have been fighting since 2014, like my interview with Yaroslav, who has been involved in some of the most ferocious bloodshed this war has seen. In fact, he joined Right Sector soon after it was created during the 2014 Euromaidan Revolution, a protest movement seeking the resignation of Ukraine's Russian-backed president, Viktor Yanukovych. It originally formed out of a collection of ultranationalist groups at Maidan, in order to fight against the government's notorious riot police, the Berkut, which were brutally cracking down on the anti-government protesters. From there, it would mold into the far-right political party that regularly grabs headlines in Ukraine, Russia, and occasionally even the West. After Yanukovych's government collapsed, Russia invaded Crimea, and Russian-backed separatists started to seize government buildings in the Donbass. The official Ukrainian military was seen as unable to keep the situation under control. In response, many Ukrainian citizens started to form paramilitary volunteer battalions in order to fight against the separatists. This is when Right Sector's newly formed political party created its paramilitary wing, the Ukrainian Volunteer Corps. It's been 9 years since then, with the years seeing their soldiers involved in some of the heaviest fighting the war in the Donbass has to offer, including the famous Second Battle at Donetsk Airport, which gave birth to the legend of the cyborgs. It also stayed outside of the official military structure much longer than most civilian volunteer battalions, garnering a reputation through public feuds with the central government in Kiev before finally being integrated under command after the 2022 invasion. Right Sector and other Ukrainian nationalist groups are especially an obsession of Russian state TV. They are often used to portray Ukraine as a state controlled by Nazi fanatics, bent on genociding the Russian speakers of the Donbass. The fact that there are so many different competing narratives around these groups, and so little source material on them in English, makes it hard for a cursory observer to research this topic themselves and parse the propaganda from the truth.
This is literally
After
the
agreeing to
only
do
thing
the
out
interview,
here like this.
I was informed that it would be inside a local Right Sector base in the Kharkiv Oblast, and would not be that far from the Russian border. So I took a weekend away from the demining crews I had been filming with, and headed towards their base near the Russian border with my friend and translator Anastasia and Igor, a volunteer who makes deliveries of aid to soldiers on the front line. As we approached the base, almost all of the buildings we passed bore the scars of war, with few people having returned, the forest filled with mines, and very little having been rebuilt in the area. The rubble and burnt-out family homes, now void of the former inhabitants, serve only as a tribute to what was once a bustling community, until it became a road bump on the Russians' unsuccessful march on Kharkiv. It was contrasted by the fields and valleys this destruction laid within that seemed like it was straight out of a painting. It was hard to believe that something so violent could happen somewhere so tranquil. Arriving at the base, I got to meet some of the Right Sector fighters, none of whom I can identify due to security concerns. I met Yaroslav, our interview subject, who upon meeting me, asked me how unfiltered he could be in the interview. I told him that we wanted him to be as honest as possible, which he seemed satisfied with. While the opinions and experiences he shared would be raw, unfiltered, and expressed intensely at times, they still needed to be expressed from behind a balaclava on camera due to him needing to keep his identity obscured for his role in combat. I sat down with Yaroslav and started the interview. I'm Dylan Burns, and this is Ukraine Uncensored. Fantastic. I would like to start with an introduction, his name, his role, like what his job is in the military.
My name is Yaroslav. Most people in Ukraine know me as Akila. Rudyard Kipling, you know. I am the commander of this scouting troops.
What part of Ukraine are you from? And what was it like growing up there?
Kiev.
He's from Kiev.
What was it like growing up in Kiev?
Just a normal childhood, a bit of a hooligan.
Was there any hobbies or
One of my
ways
brothers
you like to
did
relax in Kiev?
Mormon mission in Kiev.
I loved to go to the theater, to the forest hiking. I was teaching children how to survive in the forest, not to get lost.
What kind of shows did you like to see at the theater?
Performances.
Theater performances.
Got you. What was his job before working in the military?
Financial security.
What job does he enjoy more? Financial security or working in the military?
Both are similar. It's just that one is on the front lines and another isn't. The skills and moral will required for both are the same. In both cases, I got to do the thinking.
When did he first join the military and for what reason?
In 2014, because the war started.
When the war started in 2014, did it take him by surprise? Was he expecting it?
No. We expected this war to happen for like 15 years. We expected it and were training for it.
So he was training before the 2014 invasion in military tactics?
Yes.
How did he train?
We were training with the people who knew the war is coming. If not tomorrow, then the day after that, or later, but it will come eventually. And the enemy will be Russia. But they will take Crimea and Donbass away from us. And if it works out for them, they are going to try and take over Ukraine in its entirety. That training was mostly strikeball. Yes, strikeball is an opportunity to work on your tactical skills. To learn how to work with equipment. Aside from that, you can learn a lot of stuff. You can work on your inside the city shootout skills in some deserted rooms. In the forest too, in winter, in summer, in the rain, and with mud.
Тренировал там не военные люди тоже, то есть?
No, military people as well. Basically, those who were training us were people with some sort of military experience or skills. Someone who served in the army as a sapper, for example, and could teach and show us something. Someone who had experience in participating in some other military conflicts outside of Ukraine. Someone who has already been through a war.
Was how quickly the Russians took over Crimea a surprise? Was there an expectation of more resistance?
The surprising bit was that they actually decided to start invading it. That was a surprise. Why it was a surprise is this. Because at that time, Russians were holding most of Ukraine's economy in their hands. Their people were in every law enforcement agency. Their people. And a sort of creeping occupation was already...
You know, an unfortunate part of this conversation is the claims of corruption in Ukraine. I mean, and if you're one of these meat-headed barbarians that insist on, you know, the right-wing narrative, which we can break down any which way, one at a time, there's no reason to espouse this stuff. There's no reason to maintain those narratives. You're wasting your life. You're wasting other people's lives. There's a really good argument we're going to showcase from the majority report too before we sign off. That demonstrates this. There's you don't even need to get into the empirics and do algebraic logic. You know, you don't need to practice formal logic to work it out. It's very simple. The claims and criticisms or fears or complaints, whatever, the contentions, the paranoia, the fear-mongering, the contrivances that are put out there regarding Antifa are so weak, man. That shit is weak and dumb as fuck. And the claims that Biden utilizes them, Kamala Harris bailed one out, and that narrative, no. Think about Antifa. Well, we'll let Cedar and Vigeland break it down because they do it very quickly and very elegantly. But there are literal fascists out there. There are Proud Boys and Oath Keepers and the real, you know, mullet turned into military haircut recruits. All these real, you know, they're real patriots, right? Oh my fucking God. No, you are assholes that want to hurt people. And once that happens, around me anyways, because it's already happening. You know, as soon as it came out of my mouth, I'm like, once it happens, it's already fucking happening. And I don't understand why people are attracted to this for any other reason than aggression and resentment. It's misanthropic and misinformed because you don't see people for what they are, no less situations and objective spheres of consideration, whether you're talking about money, banking, international commerce and slave labor. You're talking about groomers and pedophiles and all this just terrible, terrible reasoning and demonstration of your susceptibility to other people's agenda. It's a convenient and bad story to hide behind, to say that Antifa is tied to the Democratic Party and make it sound like Antifa is this organization that, you know, like it matters or has real threatening people behind it. There's nothing to that. Whereas on the other side, there are direct. See, this is why it's projection. It's projection from the right. Every single complaint. There's pedophiles. There's groomers. There's this. There's that. There's this. There's, you know, actual backwards racism. All these. There's Nazis in Ukraine. All these things are projections. They're projections based on insecurity and thinking that everyone thinks like them. And because if they don't think like them, then that's the problem. You know, if they thought like us, everything would be fine. Are you fucking serious? You redneck meathead motherfuckers. You anti-intellectual, willfully ignorant, anti-Christian, stupid fucks. Oh, man. Anyways, there's a good argument. We'll showcase that's the argument. You don't need empirics. They do it better than I, but the case is in that. Do you know anybody from Antifa's name? Do you know like their leader's name? We do about these other organizations, actually fascist, violent, extremist groups. And we also know that they have given money, gotten money, and been very much so in league with the Republican GOP, particularly the MAGA, but really all Republicans are complicit in this. We know that there's a direct connection. We know some of their names, the leaders' names. They have very public, but they're fascist bullies. That's the reality. On the other side, this Antifa thing or the Biden crime family, all of this is a projection of the insecurity of what's really going on the right. That is very simple. The left is guilty of certain very lame, it's more cringe, okay? It's cringe. Whereas on the other side, it's evil, sick, and corrosive to everything that is worth anything. All of the progress that people have made, people have died for this progress. Have their blood, the ground is soaked with blood. And what's going on in Europe is what America's future is going to be because of human nature. America's framework was our one chance, and having media democratized, where we can represent, think about the Arab Spring. Hope springs. And then what happens? Human nature and the strong man, autocratic, it's just easier to have strength and control for the dumbasses that love brutality and think everyone must think along these lines. What happens. And it's human nature. It's not the thing that you're blaming. If you look at the left as a problem, then you're a fucking idiot and you're a lazy motherfucker. If you think of yourself as a leftist out here and being a leftist is just really protecting trans friends online that self-identify as trans, that's not like evil. I'm not saying that that's something but that's just some immature horse shit, all right? The bills that are getting created because people see online and they're like, oh my God, it's so disgusting. And of course it's not. And we should protect, no matter how legitimate how contrary somebody is to the status quo or norms that are expected. That's its own thing, okay? It has nothing to do with the left and this gender ideology and Marxism is permeating and Biden is this socialist and all of the stuff that we've gone over for days and days and days and days. There's nothing to any of it. We could break it down any which way, any which one, but nobody's interested in that. In fact, I got your fucking number and I'm tired of playing this game. I'd love to have friends and humans to interact with, but it's all in bad faith. So I will continue to make my observations. I'm going to tighten up my arguments. I'm going to put work into the editing game so that videos that come out look good, because that's really the only thing that matters. And people will swear that they love the ideas. Oh, that's a good argument, blah, blah, blah. No. There's a direct correlation between production and attention. And there are other things too. If you say, yo, motherfucker, I'm the man, then people are like, oh, that's so gross. You're so full of yourself. I'm like, you have not even tested me. You have not tested me. Whereas if you came across me and I was advocating for you, if I was working for you, you would love me. It is that I'm a threat to your bad reasoning and your assertions of understanding reality, common sense, you get humans. Normal people talk like this. Normal people. Normal. No, you're wrong. You are wrong. Normal people are easily manipulated and influenced, but they would love the chance to live a better life. And we can provide that incentive if you stop being fucking retarded. The left are kids. They'll grow up, but they're going to grow up into soldiers, and I'm going to be with them, and we're going to win against you meathead motherfuckers because you want that type of thing to go down. I mean, you're already doing it. You know, it's not Antifa that's going to meet you. It's humanity that will meet you, and humanity will do our damnedest to win. And unfortunately, human nature is then a few years later, humanity won't be, it's just going to be a contest between Team 1 and Team 2. That's where we're at. It's fucked up. But anyways, corruption in Ukraine. People say it's this big problem, corruption in Ukraine. Yeah, because Russia has permeated and other countries have been able to get in there because of Russia's Russia has not run Ukraine as if it were a state that they cared about. They run it like it's a it's a board for them to play on. And the corruption that Trump's, it's so corrupted there. And everyone's like, we know Ukraine's corrupt. Corruption. Yes, because of Russia. Russia has corrupted the institutions. Russia was doing this stuff, sowing seeds of division, so implanting people into positions of power, moving they call them little green men because they just appear like around these borders and be like, we are separatists. We have been here the whole time. This is our country. It's like, okay. And now they're saying they want to kill the Russian-speaking people. It's like, yeah, because the Russian-speaking people were put there and they started to kill us first. It's like someone comes over and punches you in the face, and then you're like, motherfucker, and you get back up and you're like, come at me again, and they come at you and you hit them back, and they're like, they hit me in the face, they are brutal. This is the argument. And of course, everybody cares so much about the argument. No, you don't. Words like the words that you use, pedophile, groomer, Nazis, NATO, it's all being poisoned into the same stew that you're all just eating from. That's all you do. It's all you do. I said, please make another choice. No, that's not in the cards. So production value, corruption is actually because of the thing, Russia would not alleviate the corruption. They would fulfill the corruption.
Happening. So the surprise was that they chose to do it with military force. Unexpected that was, because it was illogical. And yes, we hoped there would be resistance. Why that resistance didn't happen, that's a big question. Why and who should be blamed for it? Because if the war truly started in Crimea, and there were enough forces and means, then maybe Donbass would not have happened, and maybe this war would not have happened as well.
Does he think that the Russians would have had more success if they stuck to institutional capture instead of full invasion?
It was working for them back then.
That's a good question.
They were doing it. Even harsher than Belarus, most likely.
Did he know anybody displaced by the Russian invasion of Crimea? Any family, friends?
Yes, yeah. I know people who were doing big business in Crimea, who just had to abandon everything. They took what they could with them, squished it in 2 cars and left. They had to leave hectares of land behind. Left their factories and everything they owned behind.
How important is it to him personally to liberate Crimea?
Yes, it's very important. Because the ultimate goal of this war and our struggle against Russia is to take back what they took from us.
An important thing to understand about this history, about this situation, is Crimea has gone through a lot of different hands through the centuries. It's an old, civilization has been in Crimea for a long, long time. Catherine the Great stole it. And Catherine the Great stole the throne, too. So she's an interesting character. She murdered the legitimate, genealogically, valid Tsar. And he was a bad guy, right? But, she killed him, and this is where she's like, we're going to, have enlightenment and all this stuff. But she's an interesting character, okay? Bad gal. She's like, we're enlightened, but then she, threatened to kill, and I think she may have actually killed journalists, people who it's the Enlightenment, right? So the enlightened writers themselves, if they said anything critical, that's the type of privilege and that's the type of stupidity. Y'all out here are Catherine the Great. You think you're on the right side, but you're not. So Crimea was taken, and it was called Nova Russia. Nova, new Russia, right? And after Stalin died, fast forward, right? Because Catherine the Great took Crimea in something 59. Let's Let's find out. Sorry. This is, it's actually pretty easy to remember. So 1762, 1770, 1784. Okay, so when did, so anyways, when Stalin died, Khrushchev, which I'm not going to spell his name right, Khrushchev. Okay, so it's supposed to be 1754. This is when Catherine the Great took Crimea. Okay, it's not like the Russian story is all a lie. It's like we're one thing, Russia, big mess. That's not the deal. It's not the deal. It's not the deal. It's never been the deal. And they say, well, what about you, America? You've done similar things. Okay, that's your classic Russian whataboutism. That's what you do. You do that. What about it? What about this? What about that? Comes from Russia. Okay. Now, of course, people, just like I was saying yesterday, mudslinging. I was saying that it was invented in this position. The part that I was talking about in reference to Newt Gingrich, the mudslinging was instituted using media. That's the distinction I should have put on there. Using the mailing list, the media, in a political sense. The mudslinging and the ad campaigns where it's like, do you know what this one's going to do with the format, that type of mudslinging, that is what started with that. Okay. But because otherwise, Cicero himself, a lot of what Cicero talked about was this very idea of maligning your enemy and also adding fact, right? The goal is to be effective rhetorically, not to talk about truth. So pick your goal. Which one's your goal? Don't project your goal onto me before you can even say what your goal is, motherfucker. Anyways, Khrushchev gave it back on 19th of February 1954. The president of the Supreme Soviet of the Soviet Union issued a decree transferring the Crimean Oblast from Soviet Federative Socialist Republic to Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic, okay? So he gave it back, right? And it was never theirs to begin with. The history, the story of Crimea, of Georgia, of every area, every ethnicity, every religion, every part of this story matters. Russia says, no, it does not. What matters is it was Russia's and blah, 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 blah. But it was given back. It was taken in the first place, but given back. So, yeah, they should want it back, okay? All of it is theirs. There's no argument about Nazis over there. And if you find people of Nazi, paraphernalia, fine. You could find Hispanic Mexican dudes in America that listen to right-wing patriot talk radio. Except this is the guy that the patriots are trying to keep out. And he's also using the Nazi symbology, not because people are invested in Nazi ideology. It's because the look is tough. That's why it's tough. They want to look tough. They want to look scary. They're like, I'm a man and I don't give a fuck. And I'm tired of this trash everywhere. I'm tired of this metaphysical and physical trash everywhere. I want order. We want law. We want whatever the fuck you want that you should have no right to project on other people. It's very, very simple. Fuck you. That's how simple it is.
And the crown achievement would be stopping Russia from existing as a state. It should not exist. Because if we don't achieve this, let's say they keep Crimea, then in 5, 10, 15 or 20 years, a new war will happen. The reason why is...
Who the fuck is anybody? You guys fucking nobody? God damn, I can't wait till 3 comes.
Russia needs southern ports. Odessa, Mykolaiv, Kherson, Crimea, land corridor to Crimea. They need all of that for their economy to function. Transportation corridors for export. There is a geopolitical concept called heartland. Russia is the heartland that needs access to the sea.
The Blackening now playing.
Stop wasting your time on
Because if they are cut off from the sea, well, they are less powerful.
That really
I
is the
would
whole
really
deal.
like
That's
to hear
with China
more
too.
about,
They're like,
the dissolution of
America's
Russia and
Western
why he thinks
encroachment.
it should be dissolved.
No. Stop
Does
being
he,
fucking stupid.
Believe that there's no way Russia could ever exist peacefully?
I'm giving you the
with Ukraine?
chance. Take my hand. Let's go. Let's join together. We are what is strong.
Russian
We
state
are
should
what is
stop
amazing.
existing.
But there ain't no
Because-
fucking we, so fuck you. I'm amazing. I'm strong.
Otherwise,
and I'm going to
they
keep
will
my
lick their
strength to
wounds into
myself
matters again.
to resist
They're
y'all
better
stupid
this
fucking
time.
asses. I'm going to hit this a
In
different
5,
way.
10,
I'm going to
15,
come around
or
back
20 years
and
from
I'm
now
going to
on,
laugh at you and
they will
point in your
start a new
face
war.
when I do it the right way. I just
New
thought
war
I'd give
again.
you a chance to just us to
And
do
I
this.
don't want this
But there ain't
new
no
war for
fucking
my
us.
children or
Fuck you.
grandchildren.
I hope you burn. But maybe some other people will be like, no, I was with you the whole time, and you'll tell me so, and that'll be fine.
We
But
tried
I'm
to
not
coexist
getting that.
peacefully with them since 1991. Independent Ukraine, independent democratic Russia, peaceful coexistence had begun. And Russian General Staff in
It's easy to forget when everybody liked you, when everybody wants your attention all the time. I've had that. I've had a lot of that. I still have that. Just not in this way where it's not about wanting it. It's about needing it because of what's going on, not because of my ego. That's projection on your part, and you shouldn't feel ashamed of your own ego. Ego isn't even the right word, but that's the language you guys traffic in, and I'm not going to get mired in another... I'm not going to try to put out better information to show context, and it's not as simple as you think, but if you want to use the words and you want to get at the substance that the words are trying to describe, here is a little more context. Instead of doing that, because you call that rambling, it's not like Tim Pool's show. Don't you know they take 4-second clips? Don't you know they take clips? This ain't fucking Tim Pool's show, motherfucker. This is not Tim Pool's show. Tim Pool fucking sucks. We know that. Tim Pool sucks. He's a liar. He's a con artist, and he's not good at it. But he's at your speed. He's dumb, and he treats things in a simple yet exciting way. Oh, it's the groomers and the pedophiles, blah, 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 blah. He uses that narrative that provokes you dumb motherfuckers to participate in this culture war, which is now becoming a war. The federal government is going to step in. It's going to get a lot nastier. But we know how to go underground, and we know how to use these, we know how to use this. It's already happening. Check Telegram. See? Telegram. But here's the point. You don't have to be stupid, okay? You don't have to be stupid. You can feel self-assured. You can give yourself credit, all right? And say, like, I'm going to fight. I'm going to do this. I'm not going to be like everybody else. I'm not going to be sucked into this. But it is a we thing. It should have been. Anyways, it should have been. The shipping lanes and stuff. We're talking about that. Yeah, see, I don't fucking care about you. I just want to be able to finish my thought, to have it here for posterity's sake. Ego. Listen, ego. So, you're allowed to feel, proud of the potential that you've got. But there was a point before that. But the shipping lanes and all that stuff, that really is what it's about. It's Tim Pool and the 4-second clip thing. Yeah. Like, motherfucker. There are other people that do things different way, number one. Number two, it's not very exciting to just sit here and watch somebody else's video the whole time. Number three, anybody that's, coming from a more conventional, you got the spotlight on you, the dead air, no dead air. You can't let dead air happen. You got to fill it up with noise. So I'm using a lot of different experiences and expectations from myself, and it's a general process at first, like brainstorming, and then you refine. You say, okay, this works, this doesn't. You pull it back, and then you tighten that up, tighten it up. But because this should be a group project, it should be, a consideration of the democratization of media and knowledge and know-how in a time where autocratic, authoritarian entities like Russia, mostly China, are affecting not only the discourse, but what's allowed and what's not. spiritually, emotionally, like even that, so much so where you're like, I don't want to make noise because that's obnoxious. You want to fit. No, fuck that. Make noise. You don't get a second life where you're like, I'll make noise then. No, this is it. This is it. Don't let other people stifle you. And it's sicker because people are stifled and then they adopt this dramatic narrative like you'll find on Tim Pool, they're groomers, blah, 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 blah. And when we're talking about clips, what are you taking clips of talking heads? No, it's a device to help make the case, to demonstrate different perspective and gathering of data, anything that might be necessary to make the case. It's not about entertaining you when it's just me not getting any fucking attention or help or consistency or it's not, I mean, this Trump 2024 guy really must be either a little kid or a drunk. I think the drunk makes more sense because sometimes he'd be salient, right? But, you know, the people online, you know, you too, Lexical Stress, Strange, all you guys and your Trump narrative. My friends I made this morning, those guys too, assuming that Ukraine, that a democratically elected leader of Ukraine was overthrown by the United States. What the fuck? Or RFK, Robert fucking Kennedy Jr. Whoa, these politics are insane. They're insane. And the expectation of pandering to your preference. Everybody's like, well, can you check? Can you get a supervisor to do it? This is where we're at. We think that we're this important. That's not ego. That's not ego. That's impatience. And I don't know. It's like when you do junk, when you're a heroin addict, you become the heroin. You become like a plant life where you just want to absorb the heroin. You're not much of a person anymore. It's like the people have become the material urgency itself. Like there are problems with how people operate in public, but it's a lack of self-awareness that should be looked at as obnoxious, not their consideration of self as important. Having a sense of self-importance that you could justify because you're bringing utility and you're cleaning up things that should not be taking up as much attention, emotion, and resources as they are, as you're trying to clean up that mess so people can put their attention and effort onto more meaningful and worthwhile endeavors. You know, that is a utility. So having self-importance in the potential is really just being honest, but people don't believe it. And then it's, you know, why am I even trying to explain?
1997 began to put together a plan
2 more hours.
In 1997, 26 years ago, the reason to have a fully self-sufficient economy, you need a domestic market of 300 million people in the modern world. Additionally, in Russia today, the part of the population that is Russian, the Slavic population, is somewhere around 50% at this point, with the threat of decreasing further. Russians, Russified Belarus, and Ukrainian people, plus other Russified nations considering and calling themselves Russians, are the state-forming ethnos. And when it becomes a minority, it becomes a problem for them. It becomes difficult to explain to Buryats, Yakuts.
This is insecurity. And this also, the right wing might just win with this gambit. It's like Hail Mary pass. It's like that type of thing where, except that's the nice, generic, harmless version. It's more like a hurt and injured, cornered animal. It's going to bite and lash out, and this is the situation. This is what the right wing is doing. And the right wing is not just a political party. It's not just Trump. It's a behavioral in-group, out-group thing because they know that their way of thinking, their simplistic loyalty to the leader, strength, semper fi, these social programs ain't working out here, Patriot Radio, fetishization of strength and brutality, fetishization of misunderstanding and lack of context, fetishization of what otherwise would have been an enriching facet of our culture, something that you could possibly romanticize. You can romanticize things, but there's this line into fetishization, like commodity fetishization. You're taking the soul out of the thing and you're replacing it with this material worship. It's like the era of hollow person self-importance. It's like, I need to return this. It's like, you didn't even buy it from here. Yes, I did. And the argument is like, this person is not right. You can see the tag on it says other store, but they're just arguing. This is what you are. This is what we are. Not me, motherfucker. And I'm begging for someone that is, not me. I'm begging for it. But everyone's all too happy to say the opposite. Yeah, it's the insecurity that threatens their very existence. It's the scarcity mind frame. It's just why you have violence, you have aggravation, you have lies, you have backdoor dealings. You have the things you have because the only thing that matters is producing the result. Because otherwise you perish, right? Humans will do whatever they can to survive. Animals generally follow the same principle. Higher intelligences, more so. Feeling threatened, injured, having not just a scarcity of resource, because it's a competition of who has the most, right? There's resources that are being pissed away on this. It's insane, guys. And you are all so happy to play into it. And the only reason that anybody would be here espousing these positions is because they are an affect of the Gamergate bullshit. And its timing allowed it to coalesce with the political complaints and arguments around the Trump campaign and the pandemic. See, it's a genealogy of ideations, situations, contexts. But this Gamergate thing, this is where you all come from. This fucking guy this morning say, I'm not talking about Gamergate. You don't have to be talking about Gamergate. I am. And I'm telling you that the affect that people carry online, that their sense of urgency and confidence in their political expressions, their ability to say, this is what I think about this. Your takes are assembled off-site, and you've, I don't know, bought them when you were sleep shopping because, I don't know, you think that you created them or something. You're allowed to have different opinions. Of course, you're allowed to be wrong. You're allowed to whatever. Who can say what is allowable or not? These bigotist, fascist fuckheads, they want to say what's allowed or not. They want to think about power and leadership being unilateral and a contest of good leaders. And, that's it. Semper Fi. Like this fetishization of brutality and strength. It's not strength and it's not masculinity. It's a sign that you are easily manipulated by stronger people that understand what real strength is. Strength is not necessarily good. It just is. When you get that, you're a little bit closer. But please, for the love of God, understand that all of these right-wing narratives, the more extreme and bananas that they are, groomers, pedophiles, Nazis in Ukraine, now they're talking about capitalism, as if right-wing people really care about capitalism. It's about power. It's about power. And they don't really understand the nature of power. They don't understand the nature of humans. They don't understand the nature of history. Many people do. It's not just me that understand it. But maybe they've been wiser to say there's no hacking at the internet. You can't make a dent in it, for whatever reasons.
And North Caucasus,
vicious, cornered
while they are
animal.
part of
That's
this humongous
Trump. That's all of
multinational
this.
formation.
That's Lukashenko, Putin.
And why it's
all
them
of
exactly that have to submit to Russia?
Not Xi Jinping. He's comfortable.
That is why they need to put up the percentage of Russians.
Зробити цей процентаж трошки більше. Найбільший близький
The closest ethnos to them, well,
народність.
that's us, Ukrainians.
Другий варіант.
Another
друга
reason.
причина. Росія
Russia is an empire.
Як би вона помогла?
Whatever its name is, it remains an empire.
I wonder if they still speak Slurgic.
Empires can only maintain
brother
themselves for expansion.
Said they speak Slurgic. It's a mix.
As soon as an empire
Russian
stops
and
expanding,
Ukrainian.
it crumbles.
I don't know shit.
So he believes that the Russians were always planning this.
I don't think it. I know it's a fact.
Це і
The third reason is
третя причина. Росія
Russia is an authoritarian mafia state
мафіозна авторитарна держава, яка
that subjugates its own
Exactly.
population.
зискує власне населення. Яка
The state gets its hands on everything it
прибрала
wants.
до рук
So, you right-wing fucking retards, tell me, you Tucker Carlson, dick-sucking, stupid fucks, you Tim Pool excusing, whatever, like, who do you like? Who do you like? Who are your people? What are the positions they espouse? Let's get to the bottom and say, this is my position. You stupid fuck. That's your position? Really? How is this guy justifying your argument? He's not. The reality that underlay this conflict, the situation, the motivations, the hopes, the endeavors, the death. There's so much destruction, guys. This is not some little skirmish. This is war. This is real war. Deadly, loud, messy, frantic, constant war. It's here. It's happening. It is what's going on. And it's not just there. It's in Sudan. We've talked a lot about Sudan. It's brewing in the United States. The amassment of weapons, people are just stockpiling weapons. People have been doomer prepping for a while. There's the evangelical tensions towards, end of days and all this. You've even got the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. They've been doing this since 1849 or something. People are ready to revert back to some pioneer. They even have a movement now, right? It's called homesteaders. And I say now, it's like 2 years old. But, in Walmart, when there's some lady that's got a show to show you how to cook homesteader stuff, that is a fetishization of what might have been considered romantic before at best, or to put it, to try to think about it nicely. It's now a fetish. And some say that maybe it's even a coalescence between the libertarian fetish, which would date back to the Sons of Liberty, 1700s type thing, breaking away from England, patriotism, right? Like these guys have like Patriot Radio and stuff now. They're not patriots. They don't understand history. And they'll be like, high-minded academic. I'm like, motherfucker, you're the one that thinks you're a patriot. You love your country. What is your country? How does it work? What is it? Well, I know these social programs ain't working, and that Biden and the Clintons and the illegal emails, why are they in jail? Everything you say is predictable, and everything you say can be dismantled, deconstructed in 1 minute. Give me 1 minute. You say, this is the topic, give me 1 minute. Now, you need to give me like a few minutes to organize that minute. But nonetheless, none of this is that complicated. It's such a shame. So the corruption in Ukraine is Russian. It's always been Russian. The corruption in Eastern Europe is Russian. Now, it's not that simple because there was East and West Germany, and these two cultures, Stasi, KGB, and, history is a kooky old sumbitch, ain't it? It's a kooky old sumbitch. Holy fucking fuck.
While throwing scraps to the people.
It's all Russian, Mafia.
There are no electoral changes of power there. Basically, it's a classic.
But it's interesting. The bro, tracksuit. We wear tracksuit. We tough guy. Gulag tattoo. See, like that idea. What were the Cronenberg movies? Eastern Promises and History of Violence. You should watch those movies. Apparently, that motif, that look, that aesthetic. Oh, there's a good Hawkeye comic too. Oh, fucking Jeremy Renner Hawkeye is terrible. Clint Barton is awesome. Jeff Winger, the guy, Joel McHale, he would have been a good Clint Barton. There are a lot of people who would have been a good Clint Barton. But Jeremy Renner is you. All of this, the media, everything. It's like, this is the best you're coming up with? This is it? It really shows you don't care. Now, he's a fine actor, right? He's not bad. You could say good things about him. But the point is, you don't really care. And you focus on, well, it's organized this way. It's edited this way. When the character themselves and the qualities and the offerings that are there, you don't get it. You don't appreciate it. Therefore, you are wasting your life and you are not getting what is there. Anyways, that's a tangent, right? Hawkeye, good series. David Aja, and Matt Fraction, did he write it? Anyways, I'm sorry. What are they talking about? Talking about the bros, the tracksuit bros. That's the gang that he fights in these arcs that look. Anyways, they with the tracksuits. This thing comes from, I guess, the Olympics when certain countries, I don't know, boycotted the Olympics or not, but Russians won gold, Soviets won gold. So the fetish comes from that. It's a romanticizing of a snapshot in time that made you feel cool.
Dictatorship.
I got more where this comes from.
They cannot allow their population to live alternatively.
Day after day.
They need to see that their neighbors have it worse, or just the same. So they have no problems with Kazakhstan. when Nazarbayev ruled for 30 plus years. No problems with Belarus, with their Lukashenko. No problems with China and their Communist Party, where things are definitely not good. Whereas Ukraine, well, it's an example that a president can be elected. If the government stops listening to the will of the people, it can be changed as well. We are the alternative. And since we have substantial familial connections and similar languages,
let's change the title. See if this. It seems like the title deal really matters. So what's Dylan's? It's called, but we should say. Make sure I get this right. Burns. TV. Oh, missed a word. And I spelled that wrong. Good thing you were here to catch that. Man, the hell is wrong with me? Oh, I'm not wearing glasses and it's dark. That's what. I ain't got no cheerleaders, so we're just gonna fart our way through this, I guess. Rant and rave intermittently. Explain why it's not Nazi, why it's not what people think it is, and how it's much more urgent and in need of our. Now imagine everybody, it's much more in need of our uniform appreciation. That there's an appreciation that we can all render, right? It's the importance is the end review of Dylan Burns interviewing Ukrainian far-right soldiers. There we go. Okay, I was saying. What's wrong with my brain? It's dark in here. I got no cheerleaders. I'm going to fart my way through this. And explain some of the history that explains why this isn't what it is. Thinking that these guys are Nazis and just not understanding history or what's at stake. It needs our appreciation. That's what I was going to say. Imagine if we all directed our attention, no action, just mentally, but our focus, our willful directed agency of focus. We're giving our attention to something mentally. You close your eyes, and also, side note, let's keep in mind that there is a constant competition for our attention all the time. Advertisements and people trying to sell you things, essentially. People trying to get your attention, right? For the most part, that if someone's trying, hey, excuse me, sir, can I talk to you? What follows is not going to be something you're going to love. It's not. How does it work? Does it work on people? Still doesn't really work. Think about telemarketing, right? Telemarketing has gone on steroids, LSD, been injected on a nano level into the metacosm and more. The competition for your attention is, wow. Okay, that's the side note. Keep that in mind. Competition for your attention, our attention, is a mainstay. On the other side, if we chose to all uniformly give our attention to something for a moment, to say, vote, right? I said no action, but if we all looked, right? Awareness, the idea of awareness. I remember my dad growing up, he was walking around, what good is awareness? Which is a really good question. It took me years and years thinking of this. What good is awareness? Awareness, like when you're having an awareness campaign, awareness of Russian imperialism in Ukraine, awareness of Putin's agenda as he's expressed it and has been collectively demonstrating. Awareness of a certain disease, right? What good is awareness? I think it's not a bad question, but this, my friends, is what the real right-wing brain is built on. You guys aren't real right wing. You're their sycophants and puppets, and you're useful idiots. But the guys in the think tanks, the guys that transition the lobby money into the executives or legislation or whatever, the guys that have power, right, and can't freak out like, oh my God, I got power. Those guys in the think tanks, they are really concerned. The Koch brothers, right, that type of people. They're not the best or smartest think tank, but these are the guys. Their ideologies and sense of virtue is what motivates this. Then they get you to think whatever way that is conducive to that agenda that they've got. You really must question why you think what you think. The Ukrainian situation and American, even a lot of European people in the world, but especially in America, that lean kind of to the right, like I do golfing, and like, hey, I don't use the N word, but wokeism's gone too far. Like this, people think like the Jeremy Renners of Hawkeye. Jeremy Renner is to Hawkeye what you are to reality. You don't get it. You don't really care. You're willing to put work into the details and some of the stupid parts, maintaining the status what you think of as what the most important part or the central part to activity and objectives are. But that is an effect. It's an effect and often an affect. I love this double effect affect move, because affect is how you act and sound and the looks, and the effect is, the effect from the cause, right? Both together are what you demonstrate. And I say you to everyone. I'd say you to me looking in the mirror, and I'd say, okay, deviation here. I don't understand why people don't defend themselves. I'd be like, no, I'm not like that. And I'd want to make the case. But people are like, oh, they're so rigid, inflexible, and wrong. So instead of being like, he called me wrong, be like, no, I don't think that, or I think this. Some people this morning, again, was really cool. And I have enjoyed the moments of conversation I've had with mostly Lexicol stress. Golden ratio 16, 18. They were a hot ticket. Gata Naranja, that was fun, but I get the impression that they are a little timid and don't really get how serious this reality and the stakes of the consequences that are in store for us. If we could all direct our attention simultaneously in a uniform way, that's a very powerful thing, and it costs nothing. It might cost something to organize it, right? But it's just our attention. And if there was one person who was, say, drowning, or one thing that was, there were 30 stones that needed to be carried 20 feet. Pick any number of objectives that we currently endeavor to complete. And you say, well, we all together contribute a little bit of energy to solve that. Then it's like, no problem. And that drowning guy is the luckiest guy in the world because he got the most surefire and effective remedy to his problem. Now, a step away from that is idealistic utopianism. And that's not what I'm suggesting, because we would need to objectify what the problems or projects were. And we can't come at those from a purely idealistic position. We have to be pragmatic and comprehensive in assessing the necessary human aspects of this equation, as well as the material. And, there's more than just feed and house the homeless. There's more than that, because you feed and house the homeless, then there's the mental and social issues that are still there. And what mental and social standards or ideals we should champion or be have perspective around have yet to objectify that. If we are going to say the DSM is the standard, then you're fucking dreaming, because not so many decades ago it said homosexuality was a disorder. It's facts matter, but the context and the process leading up to it being established as the standard matter more. Having standards organizations that say, okay, all the rulers are an inch is like this, we're the standards institution. Having standards is crucial. And out in this post-Gamergate, red pill, dick tickling shit show where you think Nazis are in Ukraine and groomers are online and Trump is a good guy. And no matter what, we're going to break down how Trump is wrong. And I'll change the title then, but how he's wrong to suggest the Presidential Records Act. And somebody brought me another piece of information that it was like the Library of Congress or something, the LOC, Library of Congress, that has the purview and legality, authority to, there are distractions in this. Like, oh, well, what about this? What about this? What about this? And we should investigate them and establish whether there's merit to them or not. However, spending all of our time on that instead of the main part of the argument is what is being done now. And it's stupid. I've said that. You know how I feel about that. It's fucking retarded as fuck, and it needs to stop. Anyways, we'll get to that next. And okay, here we go.
And for a long time, we pretty much shared the same informational space.
But still, 1.5 hours to go.
We are showing Russians that you can live without the same president for 20 plus years. That there is an alternative, and this alternative should not be allowed to exist. Speaking of coexisting with Russia, there are examples of the impossibility of such coexistence. Shining examples: North Korea and South Korea, or North Vietnam and South Vietnam. They ended up in wars. One lost that war, and the other managed to fight itself off. Western Germany and Eastern Germany. From Eastern Germany, people tried to escape to Western Germany at the first opportunity. That was the alternative. And when people were given the right to choose freely, Eastern Germany...
I'm going to listen to that again. This is a very important part. This is the history, okay? So if this guy has some ideology that's less than flattering to some group, people, place, or thing, let's put it in its right context. I haven't heard any anti-anything claims yet, other than anti-Russian. But he hasn't even suggested that Russian people deserve to suffer or anything like that. But the placeholder, Russian, as an extension of the imperialist empire, right? That's what he's saying. Part of that construct that stretches over and influences. That's what needs to end. Now that's his end goal. But let's, as the rest of the world, just really focus on what's fair, giving them back the same borders, including Crimea, and really Georgia should go back too. But if we can get Crimea and the Donbass, I think that's, I don't know, Donbass, am I doing that right? Then good, good. But it's silly to talk about that because it's not going to happen. That's not in the cards. So I want to listen to that again. Let's go back 1628. Let's go back a minute.
And for a long time, we pretty much shared the same information space. So, it can be elected. If the government stops listening to the will of the people, it can be changed as well. We are the alternative. And since we have substantial familial connections and similar languages, and for a long time, we pretty much shared the same informational space. So, we are showing Russians that you can live without the same president for 20 plus years. That there is an alternative, and this alternative should not be allowed to exist. Speaking of coexisting with Russia, there are examples of the impossibility of such coexistence. Shining examples: North Korea and South Korea, or North Vietnam and South Vietnam. They ended up in wars. One lost that war, and the other managed to fight itself off. Western Germany and Eastern Germany. From Eastern Germany, people tried to escape to Western Germany at the first opportunity. That was the alternative. And when people were given the right to choose freely, Eastern Germany ceased to exist. This is what the alternative gives. China and Taiwan. Chinese people in both countries. But Taiwan represents the alternative for the rest of China. Turns out you can live a good life without the Communist Party.
In 2014, when he joined the military and started to fight, did he join with Right Sector then, or was it a different military organization?
Right Sector, yeah.
Did he join with Right Sector for any particular reason? Over, say, a different military unit?
Chinese people in both countries. But and the other managed to fight itself, or North Vietnam. And, for a long time, we pretty much shared the same informational space. So, we are showing Russians that you can live without the same president for 20 plus years. That there is an alternative, and this alternative should not be allowed to exist. Speaking of coexisting with Russia, there are examples of the impossibility of such coexistence. Shining examples. North Korea and South Korea, or North Vietnam and South Vietnam. They ended up in wars. One lost that war, and the other managed to fight itself off. Western Germany and Eastern Germany. From Eastern Germany, people tried to escape to Western Germany at the first opportunity. That was the alternative. And when people were given the right to choose freely, Eastern Germany ceased to exist. This is what the alternative gives. China and Taiwan. Chinese people in both countries. But Taiwan represents the alternative for the rest of China.
This is so good. That's a great point. I don't know where this connects to these bad guys. So maybe I'll look up the Azov. Vlad Vexler has given a lot of attention to that. That's probably what I should do. While I'm on my break, I'll probably try to catch up on some of these facts. The overtones and the larger aspects of current events are what I'm concerned with, because that's where it's, number one, most concerning. Number two, where keeping track of it is most beneficial. And number three, it's the most comfortable realm for my process to work in. If you track in kind of with a nihilistic prescription, you track the motivations of power and the history. In other words, what they've shown you. You've got code. If you're building an AI, you've got examples of how they behave and sound, and you can take those things, right? And you can assemble a virtual understanding, a virtual model that would demonstrate what their choice making is. Of course, this is an imaginative process, but I'd like to say so is math. You'd be like, that's so egocentric. Okay, I'm sorry, but I think I'm onto something here nonetheless. I'm not the only one. What I love more than anything is finding other people that think like that, where you're not concerned with anything but understanding the thing better. That's it. And we've got all these resources that we can reach out to. And it doesn't have to be Wikipedia. It doesn't have to be YouTube, but you can start in some of those places. And although some of the narratives are painful, you can at least get what helps me in some of these painful, sappy, wappy, bread tuber kind of explanations of what they think the problem is and why it needs to change. Universal Medicare, workers' rights, they're focused on there, and they're like, at least it's something, a manageable, achievable goal. It's not. And until you address the larger issues, become radicalized. Okay. Left is best. When I think about left is best, that's really what is best comes first. If you can establish what best is, then you say that is also left, not the other way around. Not choose left because it's best. Left has to be best. All right, let's work out what best is. But that's another ideal that's closer to pragmatic thinking. I'm more persuaded by just the nihilism. But that's not what I wanted to say. I'm more meaningfully compelled to sorry, trying to think of the right word, not just blab more. I need to backtrack all my thinking. Use different sources, bread tubers. What I'll do is I'll say, it's like collecting. It's like collecting that explanation, but it's a bad one, or it's bad or whatever, but you collect it as it is. And you say, well, if that person's telling the story that way, then it's most likely that other people are as well. And if it's wrong for reasons, not just because you don't like it. I do believe that's where most people operate, in that realm where they just don't like it. And if they're all too happy to take the first facts that individual presents them. So like how David Dole rocks. He's pretty straightforward. He's kind of like Pac-Man. But he'll use one graph. He'll use the most popular one, like the one on how left-handed stats go up at this certain point. And it's not because more people were left-handed, but people were allowed to. They use that and they compare it to self-identifying as transgendered rates. Oh, yo, we got big balls. Not gonna lie, my political view is Zabanga. You like it? You okay? Right on. I appreciate the confidence. I'm assuming Zabanga means bird to the word, like big balls. So right on. I'm gonna quit going on and put this video back on then. But I do believe that we can collect an understanding like we have never been able to before. We've got the means to do it, and we can objectify the purposes we want to fulfill. Can't do it without looking at how power's structured, though. You gotta lose the hope for humans to universal health care and stuff like this. This is all performative, and you need to be radical. I think that's my assertion. They say left is best. If that's true, that's because the best has to be the best, and then left would necessarily be the descriptor for it, not the other way around. Not like left is best just cause and come on over here. We got to objectify what that best is. And universal health care and whatnot, that's performative. You got to go bigger. You got to go more radical. You got to think about how power and people work and operate. And as that applies to this brilliant Dylan Burns piece here, this guy, and I'm not super caught up on how these battalions and movements work, but is supposed to be the far right, what the Tucker Carlsons and whatnot would call the Nazis that are entrenched in Ukrainian agendas. This thing is a good source. I haven't heard him say anything out of line. In fact, what he's saying is very plain. He's saying, when there's East and West Germany, that stopped being a thing once people had a choice which one they could live in. Once East and West Germany said, pick, then it stopped being East and West because everyone wanted to live in the West. And it's the same thing with China and Taiwan. Taiwan would be the appropriate people's government, not the other way around. North and South Korea. So that's all he said. He hasn't said anything about groups or ethnicities or anything like that. And my understanding is the people that would be considered far right, not neo-Nazis in Ukraine, are considered that because of a bullshit technicality. That technicality being Stepan Bandera and him coalescing with the Third Reich. Really, that's just a power play, though. It wasn't a shared ideology. So people are like, see, that's my understanding of it. But this guy is supposedly right from the horse's mouth. And it's one of a kind. There ain't nothing else like it out there. Anyways, here we go. Thanks for stopping in.
Turns out you can live a good life without the Communist Party.
In 2014, when he joined the military and started to fight, did he join with Right Sector then, or was it a different military organization?
Right Sector, yeah.
Did he join with Right Sector for any particular reason? Over, say, a different military unit?
Because they were close to me ideologically.
And how would he ideologically describe himself?
Nationalist.
Nationalist.
Nationalist. Is there any right-wing or left-wing slant to that, or just nationalist?
Just nationalist.
Just nationalist.
Just nationalist.
Basically what I define.
When you joined the Right Sector in 2014 and started to fight, in what areas did you see combat?
Donbass, Luhansk Oblast.
What was the fighting like in the Donbass in the early days?
Chaos.
Did the military have a strong hold on what they were doing? Did they know what they were doing?
No, the military did not know what it was doing. They did not know what they were doing because it all started as a classic example of a hybrid war. The army itself was disorganized and disoriented. Besides that, in the beginning, in Donbass, Russian Special Forces operatives, pretending to be local insurgents forces, used their pro-Russian assets, civilians, and these are not the targets for a general army. The army could not be efficient against that. The military was not equipped to work in such conditions. What could work was a police action, an anti-terrorist operation, which it eventually turned into. The SBU took control of the operation in Donbass eventually, anti-terrorism center.
Why was it so chaotic in those early days? Why do you think the military did not have a firm grasp of the situation?
At that point in time, nobody really understood the situation. There was no plan. Army disorganized. As it were in 2014. It was a sorry sight.
How much of the equipment that you guys were using was donated by, civilians and not from the military? How much did they have to go get their own equipment?
You mean like volunteer work?
Yes.
Yeah.
Volunteers helped us. Solely volunteers.
Volunteers, it's pretty much
known. Was mostly volunteers?
Mostly volunteers, yeah. Back in the day, for sure, yeah.
Was that chaos and disorder from the military part of the reason he joined Right Sector, since it operated outside of the traditional military structure?
Yes.
Since 2014, how has Right Sector changed both militarily and ideologically?
There were internal changes. Ideologically, it did not change much. Though, as a military unit, we are now the 67th Mechanized Brigade, part of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. A beast. Compared to what we used to be, we are 100 times bigger.
How large is Right Sector, its military wing, at this point?
Secret. Confidential.
It's secret.
Secret.
Yeah, not gonna tell. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay.
A lot. A lot.
A lot.
A lot. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about the ideology of Right Sector for a moment. On the first paragraph of the official Right Sector website, it describes the mission statement of the organization as Ukraine's liberation from both external, the Kremlin, and internal occupation of clan or oligarchic groups, as well as a struggle against imposition of extreme liberal, cultural Marxist ideas upon Ukrainian society. Mm-hmm. Do you agree with this sentiment?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. He says, yeah, he agrees with that.
So, I wanted to talk about the later half of that, because we hear a lot about the first half, but not much about the last half. Why do you identify with the later half of that statement?
We already lived with that. Did not have a good time.
Yeah, but...
70 years.
Але він, я розумію, що він питає, тому що марксизм то окей, то понятно, а комунізм ясно. А екстремальний лібералізм, what is there in liberalism?
I gotta go back on that. I think it's starting. We're starting to get into pay dirt now, where it's like if this. I don't know if you have any awareness over Dylan Burns, but if you do, sorry for wasting your time. But let me just real quick. He's been in the Ukraine for over a year now. He's from around where I'm at, like on the East Coast by DC, Baltimore, Philly type area. DC, I think is where he's from. That doesn't matter. He's been in the Ukraine making a journalistic effort. And really, he's the only guy. We used to have people embedded. Now, of course, CNN has, people in Kiev and in the Donbass as much as they can, and they report, but it's super freaking lame. So Dylan's actually doing it. And 60s, 70s, 80s, you had a lot of this. You had war correspondents. We don't have that anymore. That is a side note. Dylan Burns is really doing it. And this is the first thing of this nature that he's put out. And it's a Satan send, because there's nothing out. There's no real substantive information. There are people like Haas and Infrared and other like pundits that, what do they call them? Nazbols, nationalist Bolshevists. I think they're trying to up their man. I'm more manly. I'm tougher. I'm more like alpha because we're going to take what we need, what we want. It's a fetish. It's like a consumer preference type thing for them. And it's also disgusting and brutal and corruptive. Anyhow, the Nazbols, I don't claim to understand them. If this guy's got problematic ideology, I think we've just now gotten into it. So I want to make sure I understand it.
Chaos and disorder from the military part of the reason he joined Right Sector, since it operated outside of the traditional military structure?
Yes.
Since 2014, how has Right Sector changed both militarily and ideologically?
There were internal changes. Ideologically, it did not change much. Though, as a military unit, we are now the 67th Mechanized Brigade, part of the Ukrainian Armed Forces. A beast. Compared to what we used to be, we are 100 times bigger.
How large is Right Sector, its military wing, at this point?
Secret. Confidential.
Secret.
Secret.
Yeah, not gonna tell. Mm-hmm.
Gotcha. Okay.
A lot. A lot.
A lot.
A lot. Gotcha.
Yeah.
I wanted to talk a little bit more about the ideology of Right Sector for a moment. On the first paragraph of the official Right Sector website, it describes the mission statement of the organization as Ukraine's liberation from both external, the Kremlin, and internal occupation of clan oligarchic groups, as well as a struggle against imposition of extreme liberal cultural Marxism.
That's awesome. That if you're coming at this fresh, that's so rare. That's a rare, precious breath of whatever type air you prefer. Is political, but like, what's the difference between, perception and reality? That's no small chunk right there. I'm not trying to bite off more than we can chew for fun here, but I've got my little chart here with just about every political conversation one could imagine. I do believe. Let me get a bigger screen here. There we go. I mean, you just pick one, and there's plenty of stuff to labor over, and there are ways to objectify it and get it worked out. And we can develop opinions and say, well, this might work better, and you say it won't work because of this. You have debate. You do the process. You synthesize, produce the best result according to the best objective that you can come up with as a meaningful consensus. It shouldn't be so complicated, but it's not about this. It's just about this. The left, right. You must identify as one or the other, and if you do, then you must also toe the party line in every which proprietous way. Now, the right is much more complicit in active and actual physical harm, and worse. And like I was saying, I think when he first came in, people can prescribe to one political orientation or another, but radicalism is really the only way to go. And that doesn't mean putting bombs in like places and being Black Panthers and ISIS. It just means the status quo, the way things work because it's the way they work, and that's just the way they work, and that's just the way they work. You know that that's not working. It's not working. So once the scales drop from someone's eyes and they say, the status quo is broke, welcome to radicalism, right? At least that's my perception. So the right is much more we got issues. We got issues with the right. In general, it's not the political party itself. In my opinion, it's a contest between weak and strong. And they want to be strong. So it's easy for meatheads to coalesce around that. And I don't think it's much more complicated than that. One caveat is online, we've got Gamergate. You know Gamergate? Like some Anna Sarkozy, female game journalist. I don't know. It is a contest between like men and being jerks to gals, and what it was doesn't matter. The sides coalesced as an effect of that. So online, people's prescriptions of left or right is where I'm coming from, and they don't talk about where they're going. This is where I'm coming from. I identify as this, that, or the other. There's a special flavor, a brand that originates from Gamergate. They still fantasize and fetishize it all the time. So the whole political thing is a mess. War, on the other hand, war is happening. And I'm not trying to fetishize or get creative with stories and narratives about that. I like stories and narratives, but war is not something to mess around with. But all of the geopolitical tensions are not only charged, some are actively sparking. Is the war in Ukraine a proxy war? Yeah, it is a proxy war, but it's literally between the two sides, authoritarian, autocratic, the side, Russia, China, the right wing in the United States, all actively manipulating the discourse so that people say, oh, it's really just these four things here. So you're going to have a doctorate in online politics here in just a moment. Excuse me. There's four basic arguments. Everyone's a groomer online. It's all groomers. Everyone's a pedophile. It's all this woke agenda to turn all the babies into transes. That's one argument. The other is that Ukraine fighting for its independence and, Crimea, Georgia, Eastern Ukraine, it's all been an imperialist power grab, a murderous, deceitful, disgusting, extra legal, bunch of imperialism. The effects of Russia's ambitions. People say that the Ukrainians are Nazis. They're neo-Nazis. And the only real connection there is there was a guy named Stepan Bandera in World War II, and Ukraine was fighting for its independence back then. There was a nationalist movement, and they sided with Germany, the Third Reich, unfortunately. But that was a power thing, not an ideology thing, not an actual Nazi thing. Because the Soviet Union, after the Russian Revolution, 1917, you've got this stuff going on with Lenin and Stalin eventually. So Ukraine's always been fighting for its existence in the face of this imperialism. An independent nationalist movement is not a Nationalist Socialist Workers' Party of Germany, i.e. Nazis, or e.g. Nazis. It's not a Nazi thing, it's a nationalist thing, Ukrainian nationalist thing. So people say, like Tucker Carlson and the right wing in the United States makes this assertion that it's and Biden gets money and shares it with NATO, and there's all this corruption in that. So that's another argument. You got the groomers and pedos are all over online. If you're a leftist, then you're a groomer. Not neo-Nazis in Ukraine. The other is the red pill pick-me's kind of world, like arguments around there. And the last is the indictment with Trump, and Trump claiming it's actually not. He's like, I didn't violate the espionage law. If any law would apply, it is the Presidential Records Act, and that's a bunch of horseshit too. So those are the four. You can also talk about capitalism. There are tertiary social issues. People come from Gamergate camp or Left is Best, Majority Report, TYT camp. Everyone's got their tribal orientations relative to their political convictions. I don't know. It's all a bunch of flaky, phony horseshit, though. It's a bunch of horseshit. This from Dylan Burns here is such a gift, because he went into very dangerous territory to, in theory, talk to some very dangerous people. And of course they have to be dangerous because of the nature of this war. The war that's when this deviation started on. The war, there's war. In Sudan, in Central Africa, North Central Africa, there's a massive artillery, nonstop, hospitals being bombed. And weapons and money are being trafficked between United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, Sudan, which has, South Sudan, the Darfur region, Libya, Egypt, and, Russia and China, Taiwan and China, like all these tensions, U.S. escalation, we're parking battleships off in international waters next to China. And it's tense. So this, I think, is very informative, no matter where somebody's coming from, just to understand, a lot of people are in this mind frame where they're fighting for their very existence, but doing so it may matter, like what the country and things like that. It may matter. Some of the more objective linear goals may matter still, but the main thing is it's a cultural, you're trying to win reality. Who gets to determine what reality is? And that's the contest. So at some point, the political aspects, they don't matter. And that's why I'm so frustrated and angry all the time at people. And I'm like, you motherfuckers out here. And I'm just driven crazy constantly because that's not, people expect their preferences to be catered to, and that's fine. But then they also have these political debates and they don't want to move anything. They just like fetishizing some of the more sensational and entertaining things, like something trans something, which if they really cared about resolving or finding context and perspective, that'd be fine. Pride Month, right on. But the corporate pro-LGBT and the performative aspects are cringe, and it is what it is. But war, that stuff sucks. What is it good for? I don't know. So is this guy a Nazi? Is he a neo-Nazi? Is the hard right that's fighting? And this is not representative of Zelensky. This is its own thing. Now, again, it's a cultural thing, and I believe that they're fighting on the same side either way. I believe the far right nationalists and Zelensky are working for the same goal. You're not going to have a civil war. I hope not. You could, but war seems to have a way of forging whatever difficulty and impurity is in, fault lines might get melted out.
Just ideas upon
Sorry for the
Ukrainian
diatribe.
society. Do you agree with this sentiment?
Yes.
He says, yeah, he agrees with that.
So I wanted to talk about the later half of that because we hear a lot about the first half, but not much about the last half. Why do you identify with the later half of that statement?
We already lived with that. Did not have a good time.
Yeah, but
70 years.
Але я розумію, що він питає, тому що марксизм то окей, то понятно, а комунізм ясно. А екстремальний лібералізм, what is there in liberalism? Що там в лібералізмі?
What's that about?
Тому що Запад це майже всі країни ліберальні.
Та ні,
Well, liberal, yeah.
розумні.
There in liberalism. Yeah, but
70 years.
Але я розумію, що він питає, тому що марксизм то окей, то понятно, а комунізм ясно. А екстремальний лібералізм, what is there in liberalism? Що там в лібералізмі?
What's that about?
Тому що Запад це
I think it's a very difficult, awkward question. That's why I'm not understanding it.
Well, liberal, yeah. Reasonably liberal.
He's saying he is.
Ми уйдемо
It's not war related.
Я можу розказувати.
I am a soldier. I can talk about war and the enemy.
Супротивника. Це трошки не моя.
This is not my
They
field.
said they have a
But I
website.
can tell you my personal opinion.
Так, скажіть, власне, так.
Those people who, back in the day, a long time ago, fought for rights in the West, they did the good thing. Those rights need to be fought for. Women's rights, colored people's rights. And then, when they achieved those rights and liberties, they, jobless, had nothing better to do than make up various oppressions out of thin air. I'm speaking about the West right now. So they are searching for these oppressions of their rights everywhere, found a job for themselves. As a result, they started defending people who did not ask to be defended and impose their values on others.
ці, так сказати, замаскировані
And
неомарксисти.
currently, those neo-Marxists in disguise and neoliberals are making up problems with
з ЛГБТК плюс
LGBTQ
спільнотою.
plus
Вони
community.
видумують цей, немає в Україні
There are no
проблем.
problems with them in Ukraine at
That
all.
that's true.
Крім того,
Aside from that.
іде
I mean, this is the problem. That actually the whole culture war. I make this assertion. Someone this morning was like, "Oh, we need to debate this right now," and I was like, "Well, not right now. I gotta." You say it'd be funny if they just got this guy out of a trench or an interview. There's some worthwhile stuff. There's a clip that just came out where the guy, have you seen it where the drone, he's a Russian soldier and he surrenders and he uses like hand signals like, please don't kill me. And the drone like shakes up and down. It's like, yes, we won't kill you. And they guide him out. Have you seen that footage? That's pretty freaking dope right there. Let's see. I saw it on the Wall Street Journal. It's like real short. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Can you see that? Yeah, and he's like going along and he's taking cigarettes and he's taking, off because there's dead bodies everywhere. He's taking cigarettes off his dead comrades. Well, he wishes they were comrades. Like Russia's literally emptying their prisons out onto the battlefield. And in the Ukraine, whew, it is like the guy was saying. I think like what he was saying. I hope I'm not misinterpreting it. He's saying something terrible. I also found, some information. But we don't need to get into all that boring stuff. I guess right sector is a coalition of what's considered ultra-right nationalists. Now, nationalism, it's like discussing what that means. What do these parties mean? I think there's a fundamental misreading all the time as people discuss this or process it or consider it. They look at the prescriptions to this party ideology as the explanation for, instead of the motivations for people to coalesce and either sacrifice or contribute. It's a wrong calculus that people use, and it's a damn shame. It's a damn shame. Because the word nationalism doesn't necessarily mean anything bad, but socialist, nationalist, Workers' Party of Germany, or Nazis is bad, and a lot of nationalist, ultra-nationalist parties have been authoritarian. Authoritarianism is bad, and it's implied that you would need some authoritarianism to make sure that a nationalist economic model worked. But, none of that's being talked about. That's not, it's just this assumption that you can say that is also this. This is a Nazi. It's like, that's not appropriate. It's not appropriate. And these guys are, literally fighting. But the reason I paused it there is, he pointed out that I believe that Russia has purposely created this culture war narrative around gender. It's no such thing as a woman or a man anymore. This type of conversation. This has been doctored and presented and has influenced outcomes. Just like Trump being elected, Russia has been influencing outcomes. I don't think Trump worked directly for Russia. Trump wouldn't do that anyway. Psychologically, he's not going to, be under somebody else. But he is open to suggestion without, being conscious of him being manipulated. And we are as well. And I believe that Russia has, maybe not directly and forcefully, exclusively, maybe not only Russia, but they have certainly helped push and toxify these culture war arguments. And what our guy here was saying is, it's not real. Like, that's not the reality. That's not the contest. That's not the problem. There are some performative effects that we see now. It's kind of like a self-fulfilling prophecy. You're going to create what you fear. And the right wing is now, the right-left culture war in the United States, I think, is a direct result. It's something that Russia wanted. It benefits them to have us be like this. There isn't a real problem on the ground like that. There's corporate wokeism, or whatever you want to call it. But anyways, I think that's what that guy said. And it's like exactly like that.
They impose. who did not ask to be
в
defended
захисті себе не просив. І нав'язувати
and
ті чи
impose their
інші
values.
цінності
Women's
кольорових
rights,
людей.
colored people's rights.
Коли
And
ці
then,
права і
when they
свободи
achieved
їм
those
були
rights and
дані,
liberties,
вони виявились без
they,
роботи.
jobless, had
You
nothing.
know, I missed a lot here. I missed
Можу
a lot.
розказувати
I am a
за війну,
soldier.
можу
I can talk
розказувати
about war and the
за
enemy.
супротивника. Ну, це трошки не моя
This is
парафія.
not my field.
Це і... Ну, я
But I
можу
can tell you my
сказати
personal
своє
opinion.
власне.
Так, скажіть, власне, так.
Ті
Those people
люди,
who,
які колись
back in the day,
давно
a
на
long time
Заході
ago, fought for
боролися
rights
за
in the
права,
West, they
за
did the
них
good
потрібно
thing.
було
Those
боротися.
rights need to
Там
be fought for.
жінок,
Women's
кольорових
rights,
людей.
colored people's rights.
Коли
And
ці
then,
права і
when they
свободи
achieved
їм
those
були
rights
дані,
and liberties,
вони виявились без
they,
роботи.
jobless,
Працювати
had
вони
nothing
не
better
могли.
to do
Вони почали
than make up various
видумувати
oppressions
різні
out of
ущемлення.
thin air.
Це якщо заговорити
I'm
за Захід.
speaking about the West right now.
І вони почали
So they
шукати
are searching for these
ущемлення,
oppressions
права,
of
і
their
вони
rights
самі собі
everywhere,
шукають
found a
роботу.
job for themselves.
По результату...
As a result,
Here's a side question for you.
They
You
started
still
defending
hang?
people
Де і тих,
who did not
хто
ask to be
So you like music, huh? You like it in music? Huh? You like it in music? You know, I think about this new Queens of the Stone Age album in Times New Roman. It's, you know, each thing that Queens of the Stone Age, or if you're too busy, if you ain't got the time, say Quotza, you know, Quotza is always worth, every time Quotza puts something out, it's worth more than just a listen, but some conjecture. Anyways, that just came out today, and it's pretty dope. Guar is all you need. So yeah, I can't blame you for wanting to stay on that. But that Quotes album just dropped today in Times New Roman. It's all like, you know, end of the world. Well, it's not all end of the world. That's not the theme. But there is a lot of emphasis on resolution and like when there are no more mountains to climb. Just smile, you know. Like it's like the little comforts as you're going across the river Styx, or as Nero plays his fiddle and Rome burns. It's end of days stuff, but it's classy and it's, you know, it's got the juke and the jive and the swing in that thing. It's a Queens of Stone Age album. It's got a lot of bells and whistles and things where you're like, oh shit, that. They did it that way. That's cool, but it's not pretentious. You know, it's not like difficult for the sake of being difficult. It's like a neat little trick that plays as smoothly as a Cars song. It's a good album. It's a good album.
захисті себе не просив. І нав'язувати
and
ті чи
impose
інші
their values on
цінності.
others.
Зараз ці, так сказати, замаскировані
And
неомарксисти,
currently, those neo-Marxists in disguise and neoliberals are making up problems with
з ЛГБТК
LGBTQ+
спільнотою. Вони
community.
видумують цей, ну, немає в Україні
There are no
проблем
problems with them in
з ним
Ukraine at all.
взагалі. Крім того,
Aside from that,
іде
they
нав'язування...
impose.
Ну, це, блін, ну, я не
Damn, I am not a political
політичний,
speaker.
Все, що іде на шкоду нації, все, що
Everything
йде
that
на
arms
шкоду
the
нації,
nation, no matter where it came
неважливо,
from,
звідки воно прийшло,
the
з
West
заходу
or
чи
the
сходу.
East,
Його
does
не
not
має
need
бути.
to be.
Його просто
should
не
not
має
be.
бути. Крім того,
Plus,
є така
There is
мудра
this
єврейська
wise
книга,
Jewish
Біблія
book, you know,
називається.
called the Bible,
І там є
and the words
слова,
are,
по
Wherefore by
плодам
their
знаєте
fruits
ви
ye
їх.
shall know them.
Я ще ні разу
And
не
I am yet to
побачив,
see even a single attempt at
Yes!
building a
змогли
utopia where
побудувати
everyone is equal.
утопію всеобщего рая.
Hey,
Without
thank you
concentration
for popping in.
Немає
No
I
such
appreciate
country.
getting to meet you. You
любі.
take it easy,
Every
biggie
utopia
balls.
requires a concentration
Sleep well.
camp.
Sweet
І
dreams.
And Thomas More wrote a swell book on it.
Гарно написав.
Is there any examples of things that are happening in the West that he would not like to see happen here that he thinks is making the West weaker?
Що там,
Ну, а
щось
ж,
таке.
ну, немає
There are no
проблеми в
problems with
правах
women's
жінок.
rights.
Ну, жінки мають
Women have
права.
all the rights. Don't make
I'm
up
going to go back
problems
to
when
what
there is
he
none.
said. What he said there for posterity's sake
Крім
here.
того,
Екстремальний фемінізм таке.
Because it's
Where
spot
everyone is
on. You shall know them by their fruits. I say that over and 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 over again. There is only one reality. There's only one reality. Who gets to say what that reality is what the contest is. And it's sick that people are not willing to simultaneously, uniformly, even for a moment, say, no, it's all disconnection, fractiousness, tribalism, neo-tribalism, neo-Marxist, post-consumer, blah, blah, blah. There's all these designations that people think are the legitimate. The pursuit is to find the right prescription. With ever having explained what that is. It is a culture contest, and people think that their intensity and their urgency and their that the amount of time and volume of words or actions that they put into it are what matter, instead of the producing the effect or affecting the thing itself. It's not just the time you put in. People are like, I put thousands of hours in, but did you produce a result? Do you know how the result should have been produced? Do you know what the result you wanted to produce was? No. The answer is no to all of those things, and blah, 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 fart, fart, fart. Those are the answers. But like homie is saying here, man, this is so valuable what Dylan has done here. This is so valuable. I feel honored to be able to do something like this, to sit here in a public forum and kind of mark this as our last night together and say, this is the reality. This is the reality. For all the talk and the debate and the intensity and the hate of Nazis and all this stuff, it's like, it's not real. Just like the LGBTQ thing. Of course, right-wing people are producing these bills. So my address is to the right-wing motherfucking stupid assholes. Stop doing that. Lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, these are all different people that need to coalesce to produce political action. You need to make coalitions. It's not a group. It's not a cult. It's not people out there, all of the lesbians and gays. In fact, gays and lesbians don't get along. I can tell you for a fact. The gay guys and lesbians are like cats and dogs. That's how that works. But we need to coalesce where and when we can. You see, right on. Oh, yours. Yeah, it's not, the problem is not that all the babies are being turned into transes and that they're grooming, the Democratic Party's grooming everybody to, like the people, and a lot of them are British. They're like, I bet. It's like, I'm on drugs and fucking shit and fucking. It's like, man, people are hurting in the Western world. We do not need to let them keep perpetuating that 5G towers are like, 5G towers is going to send signals to your brain. And then in America, you got like the guys are like, well, I was Semper Fi, Patriot Radio. I'll call in to tell you these social programs, they just ain't working. And Biden's out there selling crime family secrets. Blah, blah, blah. This is where people are. They've been manipulated. Okay, but maybe people would not be as easily manipulated if they didn't fetishize the appearance of strength versus weakness. It's really that simple. This stuff's really that simple. Once you get a beat on it, and once you say, we can separate the sheep from the goats, always, all the time, what you do after that point matters. Getting the bead on power and saying, these are the agendas, this is what's going on, these are the effects that come from these causes. We can now establish objectives that we would prefer be, the commitment of society and the system that is meant to keep it in place. But we don't do that. We're stuck in these loops, where it's human nature producing what it produces and making this issue out of nothing, where kids are being groomed and the transes are out of control. And then online, people see the right-wing people being like Nazis. These guys, the fascists, are the ones that are saying there are Nazis, or there's a trans, Marxist, blah, blah, blah. And they're saying Marxist because, Stalinism, and that's not Marxism, but Stalin called it that. So when you say that, it brings to mind the death and the destruction that comes from the Soviet tragedies, and of their many flavors and nations. This is political. It's not about the real argument. It's not like I'm enraged as a politician because socialism is bad for people. We want to make sure it doesn't. No, they bring these things up because they get your attention and they keep you. And then there's a further incentive because you always want to be seen as a good old guy. You're fixing cars and you worked real hard and you've done all these things like everyone else in the fucking world. And you think, it's just, I wish, women worked like this and potato salad at funeral parties. And it's just generic. You're the Jeremy Renner of Hawkeyes. You are what Jeremy Renner is to Hawkeye to reality. This reality that's going to win is pointing at problems like as if Pride Month is a problem. But then you've also got corporations that are heavily China, man. These entertainment corporations, the multimedia platforms, all of them are essentially owned by China. Now, it might not be majority stake, but it's enough to say, hey, just skirt this line. Just play it fair, tell people to don't be violent and don't use hate speech. And don't remind them that the COVID leaked from a lab in Wuhan. Here's a gal I like, Rebecca Watson, I think her name is. And she tried to say that the Wuhan lab leak is like the aliens. It's a conspiracy that's false. It's not accurate. I think she might try to get away with it by saying, no, she didn't say that it leaking from a lab wasn't true. But she's tying the idea that it came from a lab and invalidating that based off another assertion that's hidden in there, where it leaked from the lab because it was developed as a bioweapon. The bioweapon thing, yeah, that's not right. Take that out. But of course, it came from Wuhan. Now, putting that squarely on China, that's not what I'm trying to do. I'm just saying that that's a fact. And that being kept to the side because it's an inconvenient fact by assuming that people are going to draw associations and uncomfortable connections to this, that, and the other. This corporate bureaucratic wokeism is a problem. Not even necessarily because of the effects it produces, because you can use a different service. You don't have to be online. You don't have to live that way, at least not in America. In China, you do. And let me remind you that China is not China's. China is not Chinese. You've got Xinjiang and Tibet and Hong Kong and, of course, Taiwan, and all these different cultures and languages and ideations and histories are, China's just, I don't care that I'm deviating. This information is my time. Listen, I'm going to deviate again. What's it called? Liberal Fascism, the book by Jonah Goldberg, starts with, let's find the quote. The quote. George Carlin and Liberal Fascism. Okay, what did George Carlin say when fascism comes to America? He says, he's talking about TikTokers and stuff, but this is appropriate. The TikToker user then showed a video from former U.S. See, this is wrong. Trump is a bad guy. He's not being maligned. The reason people think he is because there are these things going on. So you can say, they're just doing that to me. The right wing loves that. The right wing is the worst. The Republicans, especially the MAGA, the Trumpeteers, these are the worst threat to all the progress, all the good things, technologically, socially, spiritually, everything that we've been able to just barely sustain and eke out and push forward and maintain. Little regresses, but mostly, we're able to mark that progress. That is being threatened most urgently and enthusiastically, in all the ways, urgently, all the lees. Is Trump and the MAGA movement and this ideology, this strength over weakness, really. But they're seeing the corporate wokeism is what Jeremy Renner is to Hawkeye. It's you don't get it. You don't see the value in the original source material. So you're fetishizing some affect or effect that it misses the real point, the baby in the bathwater. You're like, this is the bathwater, the water. So, that's all. That's Jeremy Renner. He's the water, not the baby. And people are using these analogies and things to Trump to say he's innocent. He's might not be like a perfect human, but he's not. The media makes him look bad. This narrative is busted. It's a bad narrative. He is a bad guy. He's hooking his line to another problem and saying, "See, they're doing that to me." It's a technique. It's a tactic. And the fact that it works is it's a just cause for me to be like, "You are so fucking dumb." And the war and the tragedy and all the shit that's going on that we're perpetuating with our ignorance not only are we neutral, but I'm saying you, the right wing, people that make excuses and think Tucker Carlson is a journalist, you can't stop doing that. I just want to see what Carlin said. Okay, here we go. Glassman. Here we go. Now, George, I think you know. Do you know what fascism is? Do you know what fascism is? Do you know what Nazis are? I don't know. What I'm not going to read all that other stuff. Oh, shit. Carlin, when fascism comes to America, it will not be in brown and black shirts. It will not be with jackboots. It will be with Nike sneakers and smiley shirts. Smiley. Germany lost the Second World War. Fascism won it. Believe it, my friend. Carlin is not wrong. But people then take Carlin and they say, oh, Trump, Trump is being maligned and this, that, and the other.
On Spring.
It's inappropriate. It's inappropriate. Not like I'm offended by it, but literally like it's an inappropriate connection, lack thereof. You know what I mean? It's liberal fascism, and that's what it is, liberal fascism. There are so many problems in society that are not what people think when you say that. It's not the drugs and the crime. It's not the ghettos. Those are things that are effects of the problem. Are they problematic? Yes. But solving them and understanding what the difficulty is, is rooted in the cause, not that effect.
Equal without concentration camps. No such country. Every utopia requires a concentration camp. And Thomas More wrote a swell book on it.
Is there any examples of things that are happening in the West that he would not like to see happen here that he thinks is making the West weaker?
There are no problems with women's rights. Women have all the rights. Don't make up problems when there is none. Yeah, that's it. Aside from that, as the practice showed, all leftist trajectories tend to stall the development of the country. We are living in a WASP civilization. White Anglo-Saxon Protestants. We are using the legacy of these people. The whole world lives in this paradigm. And as it is right now, any attempts to change or reject it will lead to its collapse. This civilization will be gone. And instead, we will have Chinese civilization. Already a big problem, that. But we strayed from the topic.
No, you didn't. You didn't, brother. You didn't. You are on the money. That is the topic. I think he gets some things wrong there. What he calls the WASP, culture, it's like part true, right? But it's not. That's not where the harm is. That's an effect. That's an aesthetic. That's Babs, grab the badminton, grab my badminton, what do you call it, thingy that you hit the badminton thing with. Those people, the Kennedys, that put the sailor hat on at the barbecue type people. White, no, those guys, they were Catholics. The Kennedys were Catholics. But still, that's what I'm saying. It's not a homogenization like that. I can understand. Now, first off, there might be a difference in translation. There might be, I don't know, the left fist. No. And in fact, no, he's not, which is the really interesting thing. Dylan here has produced the very, very first actual piece of journalism getting into this. I looked at, So I guess he would identify as, what's the Wikipedia page here? Right sector, right? So I'm trying to investigate right sector, but all of this stuff is moving so fast, and the associations and assumptions that people put out there and onto this stuff, is it's too easy to say they're neo-Nazis. There's no neo-Nazis. Well, what did he say? What did he say that made you, let's isolate it? Because you can call me Bud, but that doesn't. Bud, you're real smart. You're one of these guys that's like, hey, it's real simple. It's right there in front of you. Let's go back a little. You tell me what the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant thing how much did you listen to? And then it's fucking fascist. Define fascist for me. I guarantee that I'm more left than you, and my fists are bigger. So we can go, it's all about like, I'm certain, I'm confident, or we can look at what's there and we can try to parse it out and establish what's real and not. Because what you think the contest is not the deal. The contest is a war over reality. The war is already in effect. And forget Ukraine. Look over at Sudan. Look at Florida. The sparks are either just smoking or they're full out roaring, but the map has been laid. So, let's go back and listen to what he said, because I'm not hearing anything to that effect. In fact, he said something about women. He said the women have all the rights. And he said, don't invent problems where there are none. And I do believe that he's onto something in that when you go back even 50 years, the technicality of rights are in place. Now, the cultural assumptions and functions are another matter. And we in the West have no other access to what these guys talk about. And we make these assumptions that there are neo-Nazis there, which is really just based on the Stepan Bandera thing. There was an association with a Ukrainian nationalist. When you say nationalist, this nationalist does not mean Nazi. Nationalist means you believe that your country is a country, right? Now, there are some cultural affects to that, but those vary, and it could be as benign as the 4th of July, sparklers. It's just nationalism. It's not Nationalist Socialist Workers' Party of Germany. However, Stepan Bandera did coalesce with the Third Reich because Russia, the Soviet Russia, was trying to pull Ukraine into itself again. And Ukraine has been deserving of its independence for centuries and centuries and centuries. So Dylan going in right next to the Russian border and meeting with this guy, it's unparalleled. There's nothing else out there that gives us insight like this. And it's never been more needed because this misunderstanding of fascism. In fact, this guy's not like that. Not like American right-wing people. That's fascism. Asserting your cult. I'm not saying all of his politics are good. I'm not saying everything he says is perfect, but his fundamental understanding of the contest over reality and how China is very much so a contender to actively enact a different reality. How Russia has been manufacturing the culture war, has been nurturing and provoking it, essentially creating it. It's their product. The gender issues. Our sense of agitation and iration over it is a construct of Russian influence. Now, it's very much so a real thing. There are real people who are put at odds. But I would assume that someone like you who's shown me this much bad faith would also assume that I would be transphobic, homophobic, etc. But I'm probably queerer than any $3 bill you could imagine. It's not like this guy is saying making problems where there are none are playing in to the hopes and dreams of men that manipulate the world as if it's their plaything, because they can, and it works. And people love to attach themselves to narratives rather than taking 20 seconds to actually listen to the words that the person said to understand what the fuck is actually going on. But
no such country. Every utopia requires a concentration camp. And Thomas More wrote a swell book on it.
Is there any examples of things that are happening in the West that he would not like to see happen here that he thinks is making the West weaker?
There are no problems with women's rights. Women have all the rights. Don't make up problems when there is none.
So, of course, this is problematic. But it's not a binary. It's not like, damn, he's evil, he's a Nazi now. You're talking about... That's just too much, okay? So, I'm not trying to say ignore that. What is there is there. What is real is real. But associating people with different parties or ideologies or agendas, even worse, is even more of a malignment of truth than, say, someone who has a, iffy take on... He's not saying women are stupid or anything like that. He's just saying don't make problems where there are none. I think Dylan asking about women's rights is maybe to see if he has some misogynistic characteristics. And he may. He may be very patriarchal. I think you could accuse him of being a patriarchal nationalist, but not not like a racist, not because he liberal values, fighting for rights. If you're just coming in, this is the worst part. And it took this long to get to anything questionable. I've gone over this with a fine-tooth comb. And as far as his political aspirations go, it's just to end Russian influence. It's to say that there's a contest over culture, and that goes back for a long time. And the liberal world has fought for its rights, and those rights were good. For people of color, he said for people of color, for women, people fighting for their rights is a good thing. And maintaining those is even better. And when you have an imperialist monster like Russia actively through the years and still, proactively throughout even, seeking to dismantle people's cultures and countries, then of course you get an active, actual culture war. Whereas in America, in the West, we're experiencing this fabrication of a culture war that then attracts people who like to have a contest between weakness and strength. You get Semper Fi, dude, Patriot Radio. And then on the other side, you get milquetoast fucking bread tuber Canadians acting like they know what's going on in American politics. And they're like, oh, it's such a tragedy. They're murdering the transes. And it's like now that is becoming more and more the case because people are all too happy to participate in and along those lines. It's a contest between, well, the weak is actually stronger than you. And it assumes that there are stereotypes that go with these things. Instead of playing it human to human, people choose to participate in that. Whereas in other countries, there's an actual real culture war going back hundreds and hundreds of years. So some of his views are, yes, problematic. But, if you really feel like you're justified to say that, I really encourage anyone to watch more and put it together and say, this is the good, this is the bad, and this is the ugly. It's just not a game. This is not figuring out who's the bad guy and the good guy. It's like, why are people willing to fight in a war and mean it? Like it's an easier explanation to say, well, they're willing to do that because they're crazy or Nazis and they hate, that's just, I think, an easier point to travel to. It's not as much distance. So of course it's easier. The economics of decision-making and worldview assessing, I think, explains why people jump to these assumptions based off of the ideologies they think people embody. But in reality, when there's blood on the ground, these ideologies shift. The thing in America we've seen a little teeny bit of, and there's no like Antifa. That's not a fucking thing. I mean, there are people who are happy to put, ironically, black shirts on. They're like, we're anti-fascist, but we're all dressed in black. The Mussolini's black shirts, they were the actual fascists. Fascisti Manifesto, Italian. Benito Mussolini, these are the fascists. Now, of course, Hitler and them became fascists because they took the fascist look. And there's a history and a genealogy of ideas that explain all of this. But I'm not going to say like someone calls somebody a fascist and be like, well, they're not technically a fascist, right? We've got right-wing fascism. We've got nationalist fascism. We've got anti-woke fascism. But instead of recognizing that's a corporate woke, that's not real humans, and it's certainly not the people who are catching the shit, which are mostly transgendered individuals who are already at odds with the status quo in so many ways. The people that haven't started or participated in this fight are the ones who bear the brunt of the toxicity. It's a shit show. It's a mess, and the problem is a contest over reality that all too happily reduces down to a contest between weakness and strength. And like I was saying, I got distracted there that we've seen a little bit of this with Antifa and, the actual fascists, the Oath Keepers and those guys. And once blood is spilled, once things, it's more like tear gas is spilled. Once it happens, then it's really plain that it's just a contest. What it's about is not, is a primal human nastiness that we can put into check with. We can solve that, but we like to play the game. The lines are drawn, And instead of understanding where people are coming from and saying you're wrong, which the right-wing people are absolutely wrong, I'm tired of them. I'm so fucking angry at them, but I'm also irritated at the left because they don't objectify resolving the limitations between us and the result that we claim to idealize. Like, we like to do this circle jerk thing instead of look at what's there and participate in the right contest, which is reality versus reality. And I'd rather the liberal, actual liberal, autonomy to individuals, pursuing creative and beneficial utilitarian results, and more. There's more to it than that, but I would prefer that reality to the one that, say, Germany does with their censorship of some history. It's like a cutesy little teeny censoring. And what is really done in China, where they influence the companies that they've invested into to stick within these parameters of what reality are. It's and it plays out with China and Western military forces too. So that's a real thing. The contest between one reality and the other is where you go to if you keep climbing this mountain of political assessments. If you really look at what's there, besides this guy's, good, bad, and ugly, the ugly is really right now. We just got to the ugly. And I'm not saying it's not there. That would be what China does. That's how China does it. They're like, just put the good part in there, put a little background music in it, and sell it as the Belt and Road Initiative.
Yeah, that's it. Aside from that, as the practice showed, all leftist trajectories tend to stall the development of the country. We are living in a WASP civilization, white Anglo-Saxon Protestants. We are using the legacy of these people. The whole world lives in this paradigm. And as it is right now, any attempts to change or reject it will lead to its collapse. This civilization will be gone. And instead, we will have Chinese civilization. Already a big problem, that. But we strayed from the topic. All of that. It's not my specialty. I'm not a politician in charge. I'm not even political.
So, then I've just got one or maybe two more ideological questions. People are very interested.
Він каже, що він розуміє, але йому цікаво спитати, тому що люди цікавляться дуже оце ідеологічними вопросами, тому що вони чують правий сектор, вони все там трусяться від страху від цього. Ось тому вони нас підтримують, але їм цікаво, що таке тут трапиться вообще у нас в країні. Да.
In Nevada, there is legislation to allow homosexuals to join in civil unions. They're debating it right now on whether they're going to pass it or not. Do you think this is an example of them making trouble where there is none?
In my understanding,
that's a
marriage
good
should
question.
result in children. I don't know gay couples.
Right now on whether they're going to pass it or not. Do you think this is an example of them making trouble where there is none?
This is for all the marbles. His answer to this question is weighted more heavily than his passing patriarchal. Now, the concentration camp comment is the ugliest thing in there. I had to listen to that a couple times. I'm still not sure I understand that. I still understand. I would want to know how maybe somebody else who speaks the language would assess it. And I'm not trying to nitpick. I'm not trying to just collect a bunch of different options to give me a way out of having to commit to what is there. Because that is the authority. That's the standard. What's there? What is real? That's the standard, not the assumptions and expectations that are more easily LARPed through. LARPing might be fun for you privileged Canadian squishy-brained bread tubers that don't know what reality really, how much gravity reality really has. Or the right-wing libertarian fucking mouth breathers. Oh my God, I can't wait. What do we got? 22 minutes left. It was nice to have a Guar fan show up, and it was affirming to hear someone making leftism sound and look bad through short bursts of self-assured ignorance. You know, not, hey, how you doing? What's going on? What are we watching? Just bud. It's a passive-aggressive dig because he has no real dick. He has no real actual, he, she, they, whatever. It's probably a he, though. No real power. But I'm not your enemy until you make me one, and that's what you do when you come in and you give little bursts of shit. So of course the mush-brained rightoids, they see that and they say, you know, these guys, you can't reason with them. You can't reason with them. Now, the right is incidentally wrong, but why and how they're wrong, and at what point you need to get to before you yell at them is what it is. It's not as easy or simple as these lazy, privileged shits with no real power that imitate other people that project that passive aggressive snotty. See, again, there's a let's refer to the chart. Let's refer to the chart, shall we? We shall. It's not that complicated. There are so many things we could talk about politically. There are many, many things that we could talk about. They would go like this. They'd be taxes and what fascism is, what political party history, anti-intellectualism, law, the spirit of the law, the letter of the law, decorum, taxes, banking, wages, homeowners associations, the difference between state and federal law, city, county. You know, these are the topics and arenas, areas, spheres that one would orient if they were trying to resolve the tension and the frustration of our limitations, the status quo, the effect that keeps getting produced. You know, how do we get a different outcome? Well, you pick the area. Of course, once you go through this, then you learn it is a fairly holistic consideration one should apply to address it properly. Welcome to radicalism. Okay, it's the status quo that's busted. You kind of got to address that with whomever you can. And then you come at this stuff objectively. But none of this stuff matters. None of it matters. What matters is, are you left or right? Are you leftist or you right? That's all it is. And it's not even about like what left or right really means. It's just, how do you LARP this game? And it's that way for the slow kids in the back. It's that way because of Gamergate. That was the moment that these dumbasses thought they got recruited into a real contest. And this is why it's situated like Canadian bread tubers that think they understand American politics, and all the redneck, like alpha wannabes. It's a contest between two sides that have nothing to do with politics, and it's creating more of a problem. And we're so privileged that we want to call people who are in Eastern Europe from the former Soviet, Union, so much conflict, so much history, so much going on there, and we want to reduce them down to the character that we think that they're playing. It's not a coincidence that these dumbasses have this gamer culture as if that mixes with political assessment and the appraisal of reality. They're playing the part. Now, Volsh's community is a little closer. I wanted to... How much time we got? Yeah, let me go through this and we'll get into more of this commentary. But if anybody comes in and they wanted to actually, if they're listening to this and they want me to shut up to keep, let me know. If you've got actual thoughts about what these guys, what are they called? The right sector, what they're about and what I'm missing, please bring that to my attention. But generalizing about political science with a political science beast is not the way to make yourself, look strong. It doesn't work, Not in reality. And that's what I'm loyal to. Looking for companions in that endeavor and not easily finding them. No, I'm not. This is it.
My understanding, marriage should result in children. I don't know gay couples that can produce children.
Да.
In the RADA, there is legislation to allow homosexuals to join in civil unions.
Yeah, that sucks.
They're debating it right now.
It's a patriarchal shit, though.
Or not. Do you think this is an example of them making trouble where there is none?
And you got to consider that strength in war, where strength and being direct and being, I mean, like this guy is, I'm not making excuses, but if you interviewed people in World War II, that you've got to put things in their context. Don't damn this guy to hell by calling him a Nazi when he's really just a really sexist Eastern European. It's like, you mean like all of them? And also you have to be strong because you're fucking killing people and shooting people and organizing people to go kill and shoot people. And you're killing and shooting them because they're killing and shooting you and taking your land. When you're getting into that territory, you don't have time to be like, well, maybe let's labor over this or that. So their ideologies are going to be a little more angular. And also, as we're beasts, maybe a little more primal too. And primal means hormonal, and hormonal means, genderific. It's going to be a characterization, an exaggeration of what that gender is to begin with. I mean, that's the reality. If there was a Nazi thing, I'd say, that concentration camp thing is questionable, and I'm going to have to circle back on this, because if this guy's a PR guy, then Dylan's really just allowing propaganda to linger without further commentary on it. Nonetheless, it is one of a kind, and my brain is starting to wrinkle now that we're hearing the more ugly of his comments. Bud.
In my understanding, marriage should result in children. I don't know gay couples that can produce children.
Пари геїв, у яких би появились діти.
Вони можуть їх з приюту взяти тільки, звісно.
A child needs a mother.
Мама.
Тобто ви проти.
Me? I don't. Damn. We have a fucking war going on. Horrific war that we have not won yet. Thank God we have not lost it yet. And fuck. All these fucking rights are not important right now. This is a private matter. In Ukraine, it used to be a personal life issue. Who sleeps with who is a private matter.
Now, if that is the prescriptive accompaniment to what is the ideology? I'll figure that out. I'm burning up time.
Nobody walked around with markers saying a homosexual, and nobody was stigmatized.
So he's like, don't ask, don't tell.
I think there are way more important problems to deal with right now.
This is where debate is helpful. Once you solve, it's just like a lot of Marxist rhetoric is right on. Once you address the material deficiencies, then people can be, and Maslow, it's like Maslow and Marx. This is how I process Marx. I mix Maslow in with it. It speaks to a human need. If you can meet that need, then humans can go on to a more productive and like a higher level operation. And as we have minds and creativity and spirits, I'll say spirits too, the potential is quite great. And when you add people together, you can very likely produce more than the sum of your parts. But when you start looking at people as competition for your resources, then people are a negative, not a positive. And then you get a lot more sex because people are more primal in these situations where mortality and scarcity rule. And, they're more primal. So they fuck and they make babies. And there's more babies that can't be taken care of. And you have population increases. And these things are known. But you Gamergate mouth breathers that think you can tell a fascist in 2 seconds or put everyone in their camp so quickly, or you do this expose, a hit piece on something, they're like, their opinions are not, he's not your friend. I'm glad people are starting to get hip to that, but unfortunately, it's also pushing more people into the right because they look at that as the left. Biden is the left. Everything, China is the left. Everything is the left. So they see the good, the bad, the ugly, and they just mix it all together. That's probably what stupid people do, right? No,
things are far from good here.
I forgive you as long as you admit it.
Someone somewhere, maybe, being oppressed notwithstanding. They are concerned with the wrong things. It's like painting the walls in a house that is on fire.
Але ви б голосували б за це чи ні, допустим?
I would not.
Зрозуміло, так.
Right sector was involved in 2015 in mid 2010s in a lot of counter protests to gay pride marches and in some instances even violence against certain LGBTQ plus events. Do you think that if the war was to end they would go back to that activity or they have calmed down from that type of stuff?
Firstly, the war got to end. Secondly, explain to me why the LGBT pride parades are needed. Why? Bougie-bed is a private matter.
Ну, це не про ліжко, це про права людей.
And what rights do they not have here, huh?
В чому їхні права, блін, у нас?
Do they not have the right to education or the right to live their lives? They have the same rights as every citizen of Ukraine,
всіма тими ж самими базовими правами,
granted by the Constitution.
громадянин України згідно Конституції. Не більше
No
і не
more, no
менше.
less.
Вони їх
They have these rights. And the authorities are looking after the preservation of their
за
rights.
дотриманням їхніх прав.
Я розумію, що ви кажете, але...
Ну, в чому проблема?
What's the problem?
Я
I
вам
will tell
скажу
you
один
one
момент.
When those LGBT pride parades began,
в Києві є гей-тусовка,
there is an LGBT community
ЛГБТ-тусовка,
in Kiev. Gay
які
people who
прийшли
came
і
and said
сказали, ми до
We have
них
nothing to do
не
with
маємо
them.
ніякого
they are
відношення.
doing it for the
То
money.
за гроші.
There is truth to this. It is not the absolute truth. He's not a prophet. He's not speaking absolute truth. But he is onto something. The culture war stands aside from reality. And people who are attracted to participating in a contest that only brings destruction to what we claim to value is a problem. One that is easily used to manipulate and affect an affect of competition based on sides that are determined in a contest not established by the people that it claims to represent. It's a problem. He's seeing clearly. Now, I'm not on his side completely, and I feel like when guys are around guys, they're going to talk, but I don't think they're going to be much different than Destiny's chat room, really. And that's not to say that that's great, but that's also to say that Destiny's chat room is not a bunch of Nazis. They're just dudes that are like, I don't know, have too much testosterone or something, or wish they did, or, you know, there's a host of reasons. People are complex. That's not to excuse it, and that is certainly not to be endlessly relativistic, because I am an absolute objective reality guy. Yep. So let's get through this. In fact, I'm going to put it on a little bit of a higher speed because I want to pull up the Vosh thing here at the end to just really kind of demonstrate, because it's about a hit piece someone put out on him, but it's misinformed, it's sloppy, and it goes on forever. And as I came into this, as I'm going out, I came into this presenting a lot of those same arguments. I want to clarify that my arguments have always been in good faith. I do recognize that I have fit by demonstrating those behaviors. I fit into what could be seen when you only have time to group things by 10 or 100. You don't have time to go through all these different, individuals. I didn't have the right sense of scope, and I thought I would stand out. But humans, if one person thinks it, so too will another. Why this is not as evident is that the proportions, the ratio of how these groups situate is a different matter. But I came into this with hypercritical reasoning, and I tried to ingratiate myself into a community thinking the sense of urgency for what was going on here was great, and that Destiny was lauded, in particular Destiny was lauded as a wise, knowing guy who could cut through the groupthink and confirmation bias, had some sway. But there's been a de-evolution of Destiny's hunger to produce that type of rhetorical effect. And the reasoning and conditions around this have changed as well. We're not in the middle of a pandemic. Trump is not president. It's going to get there again here soon. And Destiny has skills and has, but that's a different conversation. They maligned me as a schizo. Other people are happy to do that too, but they're basing like the Gamergate thing. You guys are looking for the character. Say they're playing this. So people who do unnecessary hit pieces on larger content creators, this is how it's thought of. I was not a content creator. I was just a dude thinking Destiny's considered as having utility because he's able to parse things. I am as well capable of doing that. And coalescing, it's not about the effect. It's not about the presentation as much as it is a furtherance of understanding. To see how, if there is such a thing as a holistic semblance. Once you have that, you use the facts as an aid. But if you're sure rationally about the nature of reality and existence and human nature and patterns, which, Destiny is pretty caught up on some of those. He's missing larger ones, though. Trying to get at that put me at odds with them because they're going by the whole content creator, hit piece guy trying to get clout, schizo, another one of these guys, obsessive. There are these patterns, and I get it. But as I came in, I think being seen as this, I want to go out showing you how very different I am from this in somebody doing it in spades, in an essential, Plato's theory of the forms. This guy is bringing that archetypical noise. It is the archetypical stupid motherfucker grabbing at straws to malign someone as it sounds pretty fascist to me, bud. Like it's already been decided. Before you even got started. That type of thinking. That ain't me, never been me, never will be me. But you guys see what you want to see. Your perception and reality matrix is out of whack. And the people who do see through this, like Putin and etc., they use causes to produce effects. You are the effect. Your opinions are not your own. And that's a fact.
As LGBT people are. So to speak, homosexual relations are not a new thing. They always existed. But we don't need those, and we don't relate to them. They create problems for us. It's about grants, not human rights. About money laundering. It's about imitating activity, imitating protection. It's not about protecting people. It's about doing nothing and getting grants.
Тобто ви маєте на увазі організації, які правда
Yes.
вони просто розпилили гроші.
Yes. I do hope that after our victory, we will deal with other issues. We will have to rebuild the country. And honestly, all those people who received those Western grants did not go to defend their country. They escaped to Munich, to Europe. That's it.
Thank you for watching this Ukraine Uncensored interview. I hope this first-hand testimony of the war in Ukraine helped you better understand those who are caught in the violent throes of history. We have a bunch of other videos interviewing those affected by the war on the ground in Ukraine that you can check out on my channel. If you want to help fund my work so I can do more interviews like this in the future, please support me at my Dylan Burns TV Patreon page. I have a second YouTube channel called Dylan Burns Live, where you can see my videos from my live stream, which you can view on my Twitch or on my website, dylanburns.tv, every weekday from 6 p.m. EST to midnight. And if you want my hot takes or photos from my time in Ukraine, check out my socials, including
About protecting people. It's about doing nothing and getting grants.
Тобто ви маєте на увазі організації, які правда вони просто розпилили гроші.
Yes. I do hope that after our victory, we will deal with other issues. We will have to rebuild the country. And honestly, all those people who received those Western grants did not go to defend their country. They escaped to Munich, to Europe. That's it.
Thank you for watching this Ukraine Uncensored interview. I hope this first-hand testimony of the war in Ukraine helped you better understand those who are caught in the violent throes of history. We have a bunch of other videos interviewing those affected by the war on the ground in Ukraine that you can check out on my channel. If you want to help fund my work so I can do more interviews like this in the future, please support me at my Dylan Burns TV Patreon page. I have a second YouTube channel called Dylan Burns.
Dylan is amazing. Dylan is, wow, what he's doing, and also while he's doing it, not only maintaining his true self, but developing his true self. It's a rarity, and I recognize Dylan Loner Box. I wonder if Paint the Roses. I've got a friend on Twitter named Paint the Roses Red. I wonder if Plastic Pills is him. I don't know. They have very similar, but then there's inconsistencies. I don't know who's who, but I have a feeling some people operate on multiple different Johns, right? It doesn't matter, but they've both been mysteriously absent at the same time. I don't know if it's Bruce Wayne and Batman or two separate guys. I don't know. But Plastic Pills, I thought, was my buddy. If he is Paint the Roses Red, then he's had a baby and he's doing different things, and that makes sense. But I wish certain people had reached out. I get no love. I got no interaction. I got nothing. People don't give a fuck, and even more and less, whatever measure you're in need of and asking for and willing to. I don't know. It's very discouraging. it's discouraging. But, that's not the deal. Right now, we're going to pull up the Bosch thing, look at that, and then I'm going to close out. I'm going to be done, and I'm going to be fucking gone. And you guys enjoy getting toasted by your own fucking stupidity after that. But let's take a look here. This is how one of these groups operate. And I don't even know if it's...
Jay, who am I doing right now?
Let me get my thoughts together, sum this stuff up.
I don't know, man.
It's John Rahm.
I see.
This
stuff it should be 100%.
All right. Now, first things first. We can speed this up. Oh, this is an ad.
Tonight, it's history in the making. CM Punk returns to action on the first ever AEW Collision.
Okay. Nice. All right. Let me sum up the last thing too, because that's important. Dex 439, my buddy. Hey, you shut up right at the end. It's the best time. I'm gonna put this on to just kind of demonstrate how some people, and I was just saying, I don't know if it's a group or what, but it's definitely a pattern. There's a personality type or something that will look at some of these bigger streamers. Really, it's about their personality, not their streaming. And they're like trying to come at power by saying that's a corruptive power. That example is bad. See, they've got fundamental flaws in their reasoning, and they'll put together, a hit piece. And this is an example of how that is done poorly, to really just try to favor it. It looks bad. It's no good. Hello to you as well, my friend. So the last thing I just watched was really compelling. It was. Yeah, let me give you the link in case you want to go back and check it out yourself. Dylan Burns, who is just an amazingly adventurous and awesome content creator. He used to do debate panels, and they were called the Hippy Dippy panel. It was a pretty prodigious, hip and happening institution, the Hippy Dippy debate panels. But shortly after the invasion into Ukraine from Russia, he moved over there, and he's been doing all of his content from the Ukraine. This interview that we just watched was, it says in the title, I think it's on the stream here too, an interview with a far-right group called, what are they called? Sector Right or something. I've got their name up. Give me just a second here. There is the link if you were interested. It's about 30 minutes long, and it's the first interview. It's the first thing of its kind that I've seen of anybody really getting information from the people that others would accuse as being Nazis. The Nazis fighting in Ukraine and stuff. What this individual does confirm is that the culture war and the appearance of what the problem is, it distracts people. We're like birds, and it's a shiny thing. Here's the narrative. This is the contest. It works like this, when in reality, the contest is a very, very different thing. I put this up. This is a reduction, I do believe, of what problems we are actually up against. Let me close. There we go. There's only four. There's only four of these. One is that there are a bunch of groomers and pedophiles online. And usually people that go this route will hook that into Biden, which they also consider a leftist and everything. That's the left. They're groomers and pedophiles. And that's the same thing as Target selling shirts. That's one. The other is Nazis in Ukraine, and kind of what we were talking about this morning, where what has actually gone on in the many flare-ups and events in not just recent history, but this goes back. Catherine the Great took Crimea. She called it New Russia in Russian, Novorusso or something like that. She took it in 1754, and then Khrushchev gave it back to Ukraine in 1954 on the whatever anniversary, 200 200-year anniversary of that. He gave it back to Ukraine. So there's a lot of history there, and Crimea and Eastern Ukraine, they all have these different regions, and there's history again that goes way back. But the narrative now, the narratives again, focus around these culture war issues, which are outside of the reality that informs the effect on the ground. So you got the Ukrainian Nazi argument. You've got the Biden crime family. Trump isn't a criminal, but Biden is weaponizing the FBI to go against Trump. And Trump is saying now his legal defense is that it's not proper to do this under the Espionage Act. It's actually the Presidential Records Act. And if that's the case, he's wrong, because right there in the Presidential Records Act, it says that this is the property of the United States. Now, while he's acting president, there are legal caveats to that. But once not in office, then the authority of ownership is the United States itself, not the president that was the representative of it at the time. So either way, he's just telling tales to get, this is another part of the culture war, the Trump blah, 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 the right, left, where the reality is much different. And then the other one, the fourth one, is the red pill / pick me kind of stuff that people like to talk about. I absolutely loathe it. But it's all stuff that's been antagonized and furthered by people, parties, places, and things that benefit from the division and confusion. And they're all too happy to add to it, while many people on the ground are all too happy to play a part in one side or the other. So you say, I tried to get the chat up on screen, by the way, and there's supposed to be an option that says overlay chat. You click that, but I couldn't find it. So you say, what's your opinion on the... Well, that's an important question. Now, first off, I think it's important to say that it doesn't matter. If Hillary did something illegal, let's prosecute her for that. I think, and I'm going to answer that, but I think it's important to make that distinction, because they'll also say, well, what about Biden? What about other people that have done the same thing? It's not the same thing, but it's generally in the same category, because you're dealing with potentially sensitive. They're not considering the nature of the documents. They're considering the binary, illegal, legal documents here or there, all the same thing, which is equivocation. So I think it's important to say, if people committed crimes, please, let's prosecute them. Let's get it out there. Assuming that, it's the Democrats get away with it and this guy doesn't, is to make a lot of assumptions that, again, don't gel with the reality. Now, so that's the next part of your, do you think they're selectively enforcing the law? I think yes, they are selectively, but not because of, and with this, they're selectively enforcing it because of the donor money, like the relationships they have with different business, or if somebody's like maybe able to come up with a good defense, it's like, don't let it happen again. They help themselves, most certainly. And that's even more so true with Trump. Trump will go to a lateral government institution, one of the alphabet institutions, and say, do this for me. And they say, no, that's not in our purview. That's not how this is, and he'd say, you're fired. Next, get someone to do what I want. So he directly corrupted the selective checks and balances. The Democrats and just anybody other than Trump, because this is Republicans and Democrats, Trump is outside of that. These other guys, they are highly nepotistic. They favor their friends, and they're like the Epstein thing. There's a little bit of the Epstein thing is a thing, right? And that points us in power's direction. These guys, these elites, they do operate on a good old boys, wink, wink, nod, but it's wide. It's just power and money. It's not Biden versus Trump. Trump, while it's true, went to war with the status quo. He has now divided it so that the contest is between Trump reality and other reality. Just like on the international stage, it's between China reality and Western reality. The war that is going on in its various iterations and incarnations, and the contests, conflicts, and narratives that we see, generally conforming to the left-right model here in the States or in the West, all over this left-right. I think it's all phony baloney. I think Trump is a bad guy, but I also think power is corrupt. I think they're two different stories, and there's a little bit of selective treatment going on, but not in this situation. I believe that Jack Smith and these because the main thing with Mar-a-Lago is they found one Chinese spy, right? One Chinese spy was arrested at Mar-a-Lago. And if you're finding one, there's more. So this is a hotbed of, this is a national security threat. Trump was, it's documented that he kept this stuff in various places. And, there's a lot of details there that matter. So I don't think the selective prosecutorial, you put it much better than me, selective enforcing of the law. I don't think that's what we're seeing. Because most people I hear, even on leftward media, say if Biden, especially this recent thing that the Republicans are trying to do, where they're saying that Biden, it was $5 million, and now there's this $1 million between him and Hunter, and these things. If there's a crime there, let's do this. But again, the money that changed hands with that particular situation, I don't know if you're familiar with that one or not. But the newest assertion that Congress is trying to take to all the news outlets and say, oh, we've got evidence. We've read this stuff. There's this money. That was here's money to follow the law. The question wasn't to break the law. It wasn't like, well, you break the law. This is an example of power. It's like, here's the money to keep this a law, to favor this status quo that is technically legal, but it's not giving us a return in society. So it's all rotten, it's all corrupt, and they all want to sell one story or another. But the truth is there's just too many different things that crisscross in ways that cut the simple one narrative versus another to pieces. And it takes more work to break it down. People don't have the time, the inclination, and the God's honest truth is once you do, then you put yourself at odds with people around you because nobody thinks outside the box. It's tough. It's just the economics of thinking and reality. Putting yourself at odds with the status quo is forcing more alienation onto yourself. So who wants that? See, I agree that Trump should be investigated if there was a crime. Yeah, we'll see how it plays out, but it doesn't matter because the wheels of justice turn so slow that if they really cared about the weight of the crime, they should have started a long time ago. It's all just more performative stuff. Let me pull up this Vosh thing, and then after today, I'm going to take a break. What I want to do is make a couple good videos, like put time and effort and do the stuff where the camera like zooms in on my face when I say the smart thing, or I don't know, just something gussied up. Maybe put a video or two out, but I need to take at least a week this is phase one. I've streamed every night starting at midnight for like 3 weeks now. I've got so many hours of content that it's driving me crazy because I'm not getting the return. This morning was so cathartic. Having you come in and be a real human. Really, when people come in and they're real humans, it goes a long way. Even Sega Saturn enjoyer with his bad, presuming I don't know, this person's bad attitude, that was refreshing too because he didn't go away. They didn't go away. It's like if you've got questions or we have inconsistencies in how we see things, let's try in good faith to at least understand why we feel this opinion is rational or not. It takes work, but it's good to be fortunate enough to get to go through that process with people out here. But I'm going to put it down for at least a few days and try to get my sleep schedule a little different. But right before I do that, let me pull up this Vosh video so we can see how a truly hollow person goes about trying to make somebody else look bad for reasons that just aren't there. Like how how a competitive narrative gets generated when you have a target, when you have a personality that's supposed to represent attention or money or influence, any of these things that have value that we're jealous of, or I don't know the reason, it's personal reason. But for some reason, we see certain patterns of people emerge where they want to tear other people down in one way or another for reasons that I don't know what the return is for them, because most people, I do believe, would see them as kind of doing a cringe thing. I'm using too many words here.
It's your boy T-Pain, and everybody knows that
Actually, I think I got this pulled up already. Excuse me. You threw me off guard in the best possible way. I didn't expect anybody to come in. And I was like, okay, here we are wrapping up. And I'm like, anyways, sorry. Let me get centered here. It is a shit show out here. The peoples are at odds with themselves in ways that are just really, in my opinion, and I've pushed on this opinion, I've tried to, qualify it in ways that are really unnecessary. We've never had more resource available to us. We've never had more know-how. We've never had as many technological advancements, open source applications, hardware that's considered last generation that is, eons ahead of, like iPhones. The technology, the hardware that could be refurbished out there is unending. We've never had more resources and know-how at our disposal. But the culture war, or whatever we want to call it, in its various facets and channels, is apparently more entertaining. It's more worthwhile for people to continue to invest themselves into it. Or we find a lot of people are exhausted politically, socially, and it's just overwhelming. So they have to tune out. They tell themselves they tune out to maintain sanity. My opinion of people who do that, though, is they're trying to what I call white knuckle control the situation, be in control of factors. These are the people who organize their houses in certain ways because what they see has to conform to the energy that they want to feel in their brain, but they're looking for an energy to compensate for an anxiety. It's so frustrating. It's the futility. You think AI and innovation will bring hyperabundance. We are really, really, to be a futurist, to like really lean into the futurism, we can automate and go nuclear, right? Using nuclear energy. Because I would assume if you're questioning selective enforcement of law in regards to Trump, that you're familiar also with the argument, the skepticism around green energy exploits. I would suspect that's too many words. Let me make that simpler. Electric cars generally run off of electric that's produced from coal burning plants, and it produces more waste than does petroleum burning. Combustible petroleum engines. So if you're trying to produce the effect of lowering emissions, and these things are at odds. So some of it is just so performative that people who know better look at that and rightfully become disillusioned. However, if we had nuclear power plants and we had a better understanding of I think you can use graphene to make batteries, and that doesn't have the requirements that the lithium ion mining does. There are ways, very elegant and available ways that we can provide a lot more to people than we currently expect. But we've got this nagging human nature problem where you've got the moral hazard. When people are provided for, they expect and don't. Sometimes constraints can produce a better. Think about it like this, like compression on audio, an audio compressor, or if you take a hose and water's coming out of it and you put your thumb on it, put pressure on it to direct the water out. It's not more water, but it comes out with force so you can, direct and use it. It's like that. It's just an engineering problem. But humans present that moral hazard issue. Let's see, my understanding is that the CO2 output over the life of the car is lower with EVs, even if powered by fossil fuels. Over the life of the car. Excuse me. See, I do think nuclear is better than what we have now, though. You're right. Well, the car itself, you're right. But as you plug it in and you get electricity, that energy is generated from an electric factory, which most burn coal. And coal produces tons of CO2 emissions. It's the worst contributor. And coal mining is a terrible, terrible industry. The mesothelioma and black lung and all this. No, mesothelioma is the asbestos thing, right? Black lung, that's the mining thing. There are so many problems with mining. For the humans, for nature, they gut these mountains and then you get these landslides and it fills all the water sources with this it's like pencil eraser sludge. and Kentucky and stuff. They've completely wrecked these mountains. So I think you're right about the car, but the power that it's pulled off of, like when you pull up to a charging station, you charge your battery, it's pulling off of, and that's why turning the electric factories into nuclear would most certainly be the option to go with. We've also got regulations in place that haven't been updated since the 70s. So if we updated regulations for what type of nuclear powers could operate to modern specifications, that would be an improvement. We already have waste disposal sites in Yucca Mountain, but that's a different story. So nuclear does not produce any CO2. It's just steam. It's water vapor. The problem is disposing of the nuclear waste, and that's no problem. They've got things worked out for that. But the hypocrisy in the coal burning versus electric. So if we go electric, we can help lower CO2 emissions, but we're still using coal burning plants. That connection makes the electrical vehicle thing look like hypocrisy, and that pushes more people into the right wing, where they're just disillusioned with anything other than the second option. Because the second option is all about calling the first option out, rather than having a competing set of options. So automating things, AI, we really are there whether we want to admit it or not. These things are developing, and there are problems to the AI, the track that AI is on to self-replicate. Once it hits that point, plenty of stuff to talk about. And like with the human genome, this is really interesting. The human genome was mapped recently through collective, like a democratic process. We'd made some progress on it. But it was, at the pace, at the clip of people's time and effort. When they did something, though. Okay, so 1990 to 2003. I need to look into that to have like a condensed take. But my understanding is people and their computing power was appealed to, and everybody did just a little bit. It was like a little puzzle. Everyone would get a little piece of the puzzle. And that if there's a whatever letter on this side of the RNA, then the DNA has its correlating counterpart. You just had to solve that 3 or 4 piece puzzle, but everybody doing it was we were able to match the entire human genome in what would have otherwise taken a computer 1 million years to compute on its own. And that's the type of potential that we're working with. It doesn't require a lot, if any, sacrifice from people. It's more like participation and involvement. And as there are so many things to discuss, so many topics and ideas and dilemmas and problems that need engineering and cooperation and to not compel people as much as inspire them, and also have it be a choice, not a requirement, not a mandate, but an incentivized system. There's so many things that we could do that would produce better effects for humanity in consideration of every single thing that people claim to be working towards anyways. But the status quo and power and money and the incentives that they've developed over time, using this apparatus that did, and I say apparatus, I mean the founding of the United States, it did break the status quo in a way that leaned power back to the individual. Now, the selection of who was considered a legitimate individual was problematic, but fortunately, in the framing of the Constitution and all of that good stuff, there were the seeds of equity later, because you can't have this paper without rectifying that inconsistency, particularly the 3/5 compromise. Yes. I missed that. I missed this. Oh, yeah, genomics. Yeah, and epigenetics. I know that's a hell of a deviation, but when environmental factors produce when it elicits some kind of genetic response or reaction where it wouldn't have otherwise without that external stimuli. I don't know anything about this, but I love it. Everything I learn about it and what it says about race, especially, how it, CRT is right. Race is a construct. There are presenting features, but we are all like 99.96% genomically the same, is my understanding. And that there is more variation between someone, say, from Libya and Sudan than there are from anyone in Africa and what would be like Caucasian or European ancestry. You say is exciting. Have you heard of the potential of mRNA vaccines that are specifically made for the patient that would help your own immune system fight cancer? I've heard of the stem cell. Gene Wilder had that done. If that's what you're talking about, Gene Wilder. I don't know how they had his stem cells, but I have heard of that. I'm not versed in it, but I'm just familiar with it as an idea that if you keep, say, the umbilical cord or some stem cells, the potential for epigenetic, maybe I'm using epigenetic wrong, but yeah, to target certain treatments individually, I have heard of that. That's very exciting. And if everyone got to keep their umbilical cord, if you like little deposit boxes, now that's creepy. That sounds dystopian to imagine everyone's number and stuff. But I think that's a good way to think about a problem, though, because that feels creepy, and it could be creepy if it was in a different situation. People will be influenced by the affect or the aesthetic more than, or they're influenced by the form rather than the function. And that's one of the things that keeps the status quo as it is, where if we just decided to put our attention for a moment, all at the same time in agreement to one thing or another, if we trusted our leaders, if we trusted our academics, if we trusted ourselves, but is it foolish to think this way? Like the realism and nihilism are always lurking around the perimeter to be like, remember me? Futility. Well, I've got to wrap up, but let me do this for a few minutes to put a little cap on chapter 1 of this.
Did you know that there's this other streamer called Vaush, who's fatter and has a ponytail, who's actually a pedophile? Crazy stuff. Got to get to the bottom of this. Really though, one of the top thing that you do if you hate somebody but don't have an argument against them is you accuse them of being a bad thing, right? This is like not an alien tactic. I've done it to people. I normally try to do it alongside having arguments that I think meaningfully attack the positions that I did.
I'm really tempted. I don't know if you're familiar with Wash or have opinions on him or not, but he's an opinion generating. That's what he does. He's there's Destiny and Hassan and Vosh, and they play a part in all this. The amount of influence and I don't say archetype, but like the positional leadership that people like. How often does the name Vosh trend on Twitter? It trends all the time. Destiny less so these days, but still, like you see those three names pop up on trending a lot. Their influence, it just is what it is, whether someone cares about it or not. So they, in my opinion, are a reflection of their audience, really, and by extension, a reflection of a personality type, and etc. An extension of a general thought process that you can expect to be found in humans. To kind of get a sense of the ratio, how big that pattern is, how what determines their outlook, things like that. It's informative for me. But these, in turn, patterns that emerge in the audience at large, whether they care for the streamer or content or whatever, those are even more interesting to me, because people will compete against each other in the left-right ways, but also in the space between spaces. Those competitions are what I think Vosh's community specializes in. Maybe that's being specializes might not be the word. But I'm going to be tempted to break down his rhetoric and his assessment of, he was just saying being hyperbolic. It doesn't, if you don't have any facts, if you don't have anything substantive, then you defer to, hyperbole and polemics and stuff like that. I think that was his point. I'm going to be really tempted to comment on stuff like that because I'm a huge debate rhetoric nerd. Everything goes back to Cicero. Cicero's ideas, a lot of aspects of actual Western culture, it becomes really easy when you go back to Plato, Aristotle, Alexander the Great, and how the Greco-Persian wars, it could have been Persian history that we described as Western history. Probably wouldn't call it Western history. I don't know what we call it, but it's from the same. It's just Greece won, and you also had the coalescence of Jewish and Athenian traditions, the tradition of Jerusalem and Athens in the Hellenic age, and these, and then you get the Catholic Church later, and you get this story of reality, right? People trying to collect and comment on reality, and of course there are subjective. There are ways you can go further out, left or right or up or down, considering anybody's report on objective reality. But it at least gives us a linear framework to observe. You don't have to adhere to it, but at some points on this map, on this timeline, there are some things that are so deeply influential on, or so pervasively found, like in our thinking without us really understanding, and it tracks back to this, that, or the other. Like democracy. And democracy was established by a guy named Solon, Solon. I'd never even heard of this guy until a month ago. And I'm like huge nerd. I may have heard of him or read through his name, but I didn't understand how significant he was. Everything we do politically in terms of understanding the difference between a mob and a democratic collective, like that's really the question. Is democracy just mobilizing a mob, or is it really the people's voice? And this is why power begins to place checks on itself and anticipating proactively the problems that we're going to find in society as we let people rule and not a king or an emperor or whatever. You start to take notes on what these problems are and you work on them deliberately, and there's a linear, there's a collection. But Cicero, that was a huge deviation. Cicero in Rome later, he's the granddaddy of all debate. His takes on takes, in other words, the take he has on giving a take, are the essential, are the quintessential. It's the origin of all debate, bro. And that idea about hyperbolics and maligning your opponent, is at Cicero. He's like, do the other thing, do both of them. But if you do this, it's going to stretch it a lot further. And law, how lawyers work, all these, these ideas, this is the Western tradition. And it's not meant to be a straight appeal to power and submission. It's supposed to be a collective demonstration of an ideal. And I don't think people are getting that now. I think we're really, really, really like in danger. It sounds like cliched language, but we're really in danger of losing that. And in the streamers, as I look at the streamers, because politics connects to online and online connects to the kids, and the kids connect to, ultimately who's going to get to decide, more so with each passing year. And the kids become less kids, and it works. Vaush is a seminal post poll, whatever, in this field of vision, the establishing where the teams are camped, what weaponry they have, how they're training, all that. Vaush is an essential point of observation, and I'm going to be tempted to really comment heavily on that. However, it's this guy that's coming at him that I want to look at. That guy is the problem. That guy. And I think some people looked at me as like that guy. When I first came into this, I was really hitting Destiny's community hard because I wanted to talk to Destiny. He's a smart guy. And I'm like, let's see if we can update one another's understanding. But I was not versed, and I refused to become completely versed in the post-Gamergate etiquette of speaking in memes and, like camps and tribes and stuff. I refused to do it. I'm not going to do it. So I came in through Destiny. I'm going out through Vaush. And I don't want to talk about Vaush. I want to talk about this guy coming at him and how there really isn't any substance to his attack. It's an attempt to pull somebody else down, to make somebody else taller. It's the classic bully explanation, but it's not tough. It's not cool. It's not smart. And that's why I want to look at it. It's the space. It's what we argue about in the space between spaces where it really matters. I don't know if that's where it really matters or not.
Dislike them having, but in my experience, usually this stuff gets dredged up by people who like despise me. Like they like oftentimes it's by Nazis or like stalkers or people who harass me or whatever, and they're like, "Yeah, gonna get them this time." But that's not like the entirety of the people who are involved with it. It's just like it's definitely a noticeable tendency. So I don't know. Sure, we'll go over the thread. I think a couple of people like DM'd or emailed me, asked me to debunk it or whatever. There's not really anything to debunk because debunking implies like a definite like fact, true, false thing. And if there was anything to debunk, there would have to be an established premise. If the established premise is we're about to look at a bunch of like thread items that look sussy or whatever, then that's a fact, right? I think that a lot of the sussy stuff has been deliberately taken out of context. The main sussy stuff has only been mildly taken out of context and is justified primarily through like the broader framework that people at the time present to the streams understood, but obviously that's how the internet works. So for the first fact of the matter, okay? We have this guy. He looks like this, so he must be a pedophile. That's case number one, or a bit of evidence submitted to the court. So most of these videos are going to be, oh wow, like, oh my God. Okay, the first like 6 of these videos are all going to be the same argument that just got brought up multiple times in stream.
It's weird. It's creepy to me to see how many people anticipate that online has this active grooming. The narratives around that are so dangerous because they're working. It's so weird. And that connects to the wokeism, connects to the anti-LGBTQ plus. It's the pedos and groomers online. It's just insane.
So basically, right after I started streaming, okay, I came up with a hot take, all right? I came from Destiny's community. I love hot takes.
Me too, bro. No, that goes. It's toxic and strained over there.
Child slavery is not super common in our economic production, in our like modes of production, our supply lines. But child labor is, you know what I mean? Like very often it'll be child labor, which is slavery in everything but name. A lot of the stuff that gets mined up or used in like raw material senses is done so basically at gunpoint. You know, we get a lot of stuff from parts of Africa where there are still functionally warlords. In Latin America, like it's a big part of our production line, right? That's probably not a good thing. So an argument that I'd made is that if you buy, say, fast fashion, which I'm currently wearing, by the way, you are participating in an economic incentive. You are bolstering the economy, the supply line, which involves the abuse of children. And my argument was that in a lot of ways, that's not very different from buying child pornography, because in both cases, you are paying money into a system where, as a product of whatever, you know, product you've received, children get hurt. It was basically like a hyperbolic way of trying to agree on like the severity of how bad this is. And to be clear, by the way, I do think it's really disgusting how in the West, like, you can just have clothing brands have like they can just use that labor, and then it's here in the US and it's like, oh well, you know, like it's like barely even surprising. All of our shit gets made in like sweatshops in Bangladesh by old women and 14-year-old girls, and like, oh yeah, well, yeah, you know, that's like how it is. And well, no, that's not how it has to be, right? Actually, you know, I don't think we would accept that excuse when it comes to sexual abuse, for example. My argument was basically, it comes across as hypocritical to me that we drew the line on like commodity production that involves the abuse of children. No, nuh-uh. Unless it's involved in all these industries the economy relies on. For child pornography, which is totally disconnected from like the broader economic system, nah, you're in jail, buddy. But for the rest of it, we accept it. And my argument with that was essentially like, well, that's disgusting. So if you can imagine, what's the worst possible way that a person could express the position that I just did? What if they challenged chat to argue how one was worse than the other by saying that unless proven otherwise, under the currently accepted ethical system, both of them would actually be considered legal. And it's only due to that inconsistency that we only consider one of them illegal. If you could imagine hypothetically, what is the worst way in a format where everything gets recorded and distributed out of context, a person could possibly make that argument, you know, if you could even fathom such a thing. Here, look, that's literally all the clips at the top of the thread. Hey, wait, out of curiosity, who here was around way back when? I only had like 200 or 300 viewers concurrent at the time. Who was around back then?
It's an important
Not
thing
my ass. Well, some people's asses, to be
note,
sure.
I believe,
my hope
at this juncture, that there are more slaves on the planet right now than there have ever been. It blows my mind. It blows my mind because it's not because I'm like, oh, that's crazy that's true. It blows my mind because I'm like, I could see that. I can understand that being true. That makes sense. So there's stuff like human trafficking. There's all of this stuff exists for sure. It ain't no joke. It's no joke. And another really difficult part of all of those complaints, you say it's also the lowest percentage of the population. It's everybody. Oh, so the percent, yeah. It's, That's interesting because I can't just be like, oh, it doesn't matter. Of course that matters. That matters. It takes a little of the edge off, but at the same time, we can track the actual number of. I mean, of course, we don't know the exact number, but there are institutions that attempt to do this. $49.6 million people. That's more than the population of the United States, isn't it? Which would be roughly 4% of the world. Yeah, so that's more. Now, I mean, how do we know? 49.6 million, you don't know. But there are institutions that take this very seriously, and we can compare the sources and at least come up with a median. But that's, I'm sorry. And see, I actually had sources here. They're surface level ones, but still 49.6 million according to the antislaveryinternational.org website, and 33.19 million, which I'd suspect is probably based off a more hard data set of data. But nonetheless, I don't think there's any reason to question the range that this presents. So, it's like 5% of the world's population. 5% of the world's population, and ain't nothing to sneeze at. But I just mean the reality is what we're having a contest for right now. Reality is what we're going to be warring and worse over. And pedophilia and slavery and these effects of being barbaric and resorting to our primal, more base nature, which happens as scarcity and trauma and stress become the rule in that environment. It perpetuates more of this. So by having this aggravated concern over things like groomers and pedophiles and stuff, is two unintended and terrible consequences. One is that you might get situations where people say, that people are always saying this, and that groomers, but that's a real thing too. Not like the Republicans and QAnon type stuff said, but people who. Another thing I was going to say is once you do that, once someone is subjected to the trauma of sexual abuse in particular, there's a high likelihood that they're going to perpetuate that behavior too. And it keeps going. So it's no small problem yet, because it's so loaded, and I think people are lazy and they want to make an impact. They're willing to resort to whatever dark magic they think they can handle, and they can't. And it's sad and it's a shame. But although I think it's appropriate to end this on a dark note, I do value the light and agency and consideration and your interest, the real humans out here, which are very few. You are in an elite club of awesomeness. People who have gone against their routine to investigate something different that is a little manic and potentially schizo that you've purposely come and been kind enough to exchange with me and stimulate and question and all that stuff. It means a great deal. And again, you're one of very few, very few. I get like one hand I can count on. Yeah. Well, my friend, I'm going to turn into the great nothingness for a little bit, maybe a week, maybe a month. I don't know. I might do a Sunday stream. I might sneak a Sunday stream in here and there. Yeah, peace out. Peace out, my friend. Enjoy the night. Enjoy your life. Enjoy the good things, if you may, and where and how you can. Love to those who deserve it. Good luck to those who don't.